I call to order Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission meeting, May 1st, 2025. Okay, we can do a pledge and a prayer. Can you lead us in a prayer, in a pledge, Mr. Burke?
Pledge to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Mr. Wall, would you lead us in a prayer?
We say good morning. Just thank you for today. Opportunity to serve the state, serve the department. Others here to make determinations. We pray to give us wisdom, discernment to live up. Secretary, all the enforcement, all we ask is protection upon them. So our governor, president of the soldiers that are fighting for freedom we have.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Ms. Susan, roll call, please.
Kevin Segura,
Present.
Andy Brister,
Present.
Andrew Blanchard.
Here.
Jimmy Martin.
Here.
Gene Reynolds.
Here.
Jonathan Walker,
Here.
Nathan Wall.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, there are 7 commissioners in attendance and we have a quorum. Acting Secretary Bosworth is also present.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Susan. I need a motion to amend the agenda. We have to take off item number 7. So do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Brister, second by Commissioner Blanchard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, so now we need approval, motion to approve the amended agenda. Motion by Commissioner Blanchard, second by Commissioner Brister. All in favor? Aye. Okay, unopposed? Okay. Now, let's see, adoption of April 3rd, 2025 commission meeting minutes. We have a motion. Motion by Mr. Blanchard.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Walker. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, item number 6, commission special announcements, personal privilege. I'd like to introduce, we have a new commissioner who's going to be serving with us today. It's Mr. Jimmy Martin. And also we will schedule the June meeting. It's going to be on Tuesday, June 3rd, rather than the Thursday. So I wanted to get that out too. Mr. Martin, would you like to say a few words?
It's an honor to have been appointed to this position, and I'm from Cut Off, Louisiana, raised in a shrimp boat family, and attend a lot of the shrimping meetings and all. So it's a big pleasure for me to be here. Hope to do y'all a good job.
Well, looking forward to serving with you, sir. Okay. Does anybody else have anything that they would special privileges? Any? Okay, hearing none. Okay, we'll move. We're item number 7. It'll be rescheduled at a later date. There was some scheduling conflicts. Okay, enforcement report. Captain Davis, Madeira.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the month of April, the Enforcement Division investigated a total of 3 boating incidents, only 2 with injury, with 0 fatalities for the month. Citations issued, we had a total of 823, 355 of which were warnings, and 468 of which were criminal and or civil violations. In the public assistance realm, we had 57 total, 40 on land and 17 via water. In cases of interest for the month, agents cited an individual for alleged fishing and hunting guide violations stemming from an investigation in Terrebonne Parish. A Houma man was charged with failure to comply with charter boat regulations, failure to comply with hunting guide regulations, taking over the limit of ducks, and hunting migratory game birds without a federal duck stand. Agents had received several complaints. The man was acting as a charter and hunting guide without being properly licensed. Evidence was obtained of him advertising fishing and hunting charter trips on his social media accounts. It was discovered he had taken over the limit of ducks on one of his guided hunts and was not properly licensed to act as a fishing or a hunting guide. Each charge in this case could bring fines up to $950 and up to 120 jails for each offense. On March 21st, agents arrested a Jonesville man for allegedly taking turkeys closed season. Also, intentional concealment of wildlife, failing to tag harvested turkeys, criminal trespassing, and taking over the daily and seasonal limit of turkeys. The man was apprehended hunting turkeys during the closed season on private property in Catahoula Parish. Agents located 3 freshly harvested male turkeys hidden in the same location. The daily bag limit for turkeys is one adult male per season, and the seasonal limit is 2 adult males. Taking turkeys during closed season and intentional concealment of wildlife brings fines up to $950 and 120 days in jail. Taking over the limit carries a fine of up to 590 days in jail. The fine for failing to tag his harvested turkeys would be up to $350. In our final incident or case, on April 10th, agents apprehended a Caddo Parish man wanted for domestic abuse charges. The Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office contacted our agents requesting assistance in locating the man who had warrants for domestic abuse battery with strangulation. He eluded authorities and fled to a flooded area near Shreveport. Agents responded to the area immediately, launched a vessel, located the man, and took him into custody without incident. That concludes our enforcement report. If we have any questions, or if y'all have any questions, I'll field them now.
Okay, Commissioner Reynolds, you have a question?
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Very well, sir.
We're CWD's on everybody's mind, and I'm getting phone calls here and there about it. And so on the enforcement side, we're enforcing a non-feeding circle, an area.
Correct.
And since we're working through this, and this is kind of an expanding thing, my question is, have we had any enforcement problems, or have we had any tickets for people feeding anyway in those areas?
I can get that information to you in the next, as soon as I step down, I'll have it in the next 30 minutes.
Okay, so
To my knowledge, we've had several investigations and or complaints, but as far as actual citations written, I'm unaware of any at this moment, but I can definitely double check and make sure for you.
yeah,
before
because
you leave.
around the house up there, we're not in the area. We're in the Webster Parish area. You get these guys that they'll come and say, well, I'm going to feed anyway. Who's going to do anything? You know how they do.
Yes, sir.
So, and then they will abide by the law. But anyway, I was just curious about that, and to see if in fact that we're enforcing that, and how many citations were given for it.
Agents, like I said, we have had complaints about it. As far as will I say few or several? I'd have to double, get that information for you. We will enforce it.
Yeah.
And diligently.
Well, this, the non-feeding seems to be a very important part of our policy.
Yes, sir.
And the procedure by which we're going to try to slow this thing down. So anyway, just curious.
I'll get that information for you before you
Thank
leave
you,
today,
sir.
Any other questions?
So, yeah, first of all, in East Carroll, we always follow them. I don't know, Webster, maybe not. East Carroll, we're great. So in February, I believe it was, there was a guy that was about to pick up his wife had been fishing, and he was about to get the boat out of the water, back the trailer down. Anyway, boat got away, jumped in the water, drowned or had a heart attack, not sure. And that's the second time that's happened up in that area in the last 3 or 4 years. What is that considered a boating accident, or how is that data?
We have a specific set of parameters for boating incidents when it comes to the level of damage. In this case, there was no damage to the vessel. If that boat is on a state waterway or navigable state waterway and underway and or on the waterway, and we have a falls overboard, which is the case, we do work it as a boating incident.
All right, thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for the report. Have a good day. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump back into personal privilege again. We have one of our staff who received award, Jason Adrian's received award. He's our Finfish program manager. and he was named Conservation Professional of the Year by Louisiana Wildlife Federation. And I know Jason does great work, which all of our staff does great work, but I just want to make sure that Jason got some recognition for that. So, and much deserved. Yes. And also we have an ex-commissioner here in our presence, and Mr. Joe served for 6 years. He was a great commissioner, and he's here today, so I want to recognize him. Okay, we'll go on to item number 9. We'll receive and consider a notice of intent to amend the fish and wildlife values. Brian McClinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. I really appreciate the time because I, as most things in life, do things the wrong way. And you gave me time to load this onto the PowerPoint. Just to get started, just so you know, this is the civil restitution values. Whenever you illegally harvest game or fish, there's a value that is assigned through y'all at the value of what that is. So it's supposed to be the replacement value of that. Dr. Isaacs typically gives this, but I know you have a heavy agenda, so I'm going to try to do my best to be as expedient as possible to get through this item. So this is what we're going to go through. It's basically, this is set up the way the NOI goes that's before you. So the first thing we're going to hit is the game mammals and game birds. So the formula we used historically in the past is a spending per day, which we get out of a survey, and then the days per harvested animal to get the value of animal. And that's all survey data that's collected through our annual hunt survey, the second component of that. And it's actually written right there. So utilizing that data, some of these species would look like this. So what would you see in red would be if we were to take what we did in 2011. Thank you, Cole. I was looking for Myers. 2011. And if we recalculated that was what it would be today. But you can see some of these species, the hunt effort per day kind of changed, and so exorbitantly kind of sort of changed that value of those species. So we asked Dr. Isaacs if he'd do simply an inflation adjustment, and so that's what the inflation adjustment would look like. So rather than having a Gallinule go from $22 to $84, it would simply go from $22 to $29. And so that, another thing I'd like to say is doing this a few years ago, we started adjudicating these ourselves. So we have a contract with the administrative law judge, Cole. Mr. Garrett has an attorney that prosecutes class 1s and 2 civil penalties and the civil restitutions. And so whenever these things were going to the district attorney, we'd say, okay, here's the value, and then that was it. And it'd go down into a black hole. We weren't getting a lot of data back from that on collections, and it was sort of inconsistent. So now that we're sort of handling it from cradle to grave, since the law enforcement is writing the ticket, it's being adjudicated, that we're starting to see some of the issues in that. So some of these changes it's trying to collect these dollars as well. So I understand, like, you say, okay, well, that formula is saying how valuable it is to the citizenry. Yes, it is, but there's also some sort of a what we're able to get and receive from these things. And this is not meant to be punitive. Like I said, this is meant to be to fund restoring these and what it takes to put these back or to replace this species. This would be the same thing. If we looked at deer, the way that we currently have it is we have non-quality deer, quality deer, and turkey. If we use that formula, it would change to, as you see before you. But the issue that we're having with deer is that's our most, I guess, difficult litigation that we're dealing with. And we get more phone calls from legislators, governor's offices, people, and that of why is it this, why is it so high, why is that? And so we're constantly working with those individuals on it. And again, like I said, this isn't intended to be punitive. It's supposed to be replaced. So we start saying, what do other states do? So Dr. Isaacs got with, here's the U.S. non-trophy deer. Here's the southern average. You can see it's a little bit less. And then in some deer, and then turkey, you can see that table below. Some states have an antlerless and then a non-quality antlered and then a quality antlered. And so we started, I guess, dealing with the different values, trying to figure out, especially since we're trying to encourage more and more doe harvest in certain parts of the state. We said, well, let's look at that 3-tiered version as well. So we're looking at doing an antlerless deer at 400 based on sort of what those southern averages are, because this is not in line with what that formula would be. The other argument sort of that was stated by staff is if I go duck hunting, I see a duck, I have an opportunity to shoot, I'm going to do that. If I deer hunt, I may deer hunt all year. I may see deer every time I hunt, but it don't necessarily harvest it. And so deer is a little bit unique in that people will pass on certain deer to be able to shoot selected ones. So it throws that harvest per animal number off, the denominator off just a little bit. So what we're proposing, and again, this is up to y'all's discretion, is $400 for antlerless deer, $800 for a non-quality, and then the $1,600, which we currently have for the quality deer. And the quality deer right now is currently 13.5 inches inside with a main beam of 16.7 and 8 point or better. And so that's just currently what it is, and it's in the regulation. We had talked about maybe making it a 15-inch inside, but the way it's being presented to y'all today, so y'all can consider if any changes to that you'd like, is 13.5 is the way it is. So this would be the change to the deer. And then obviously we're looking to do the turkey as well, just because we're way out of sorts with the national average, and way out of sorts with what other states are doing. And so this is what we're proposing today. So after that, it gets a lot more back to science. So non-game species, these are you can see that these are either based on the landings and docksides, alligators, bobcats. These are bids that we received from alligator eggs. And then we just did inflation adjustments on the other ones. So those would look like this. The values of those species. Moving on to federally listed threatened and endangered species or species of concern. We maintain the current civil restitution values. And we also move the black bear into that component as well. I guess whooping crane is the one thing that is not included in that value, because we spend a significant amount of dollars in the state to keep the 72 or 73 whooping cranes that we have. So you can see that value is at $15,000. So this currently shows you, there's the black bear at the slide there is looking for, but currently it's $10,000. Now that it's a huntable game species, we'd like to move that to be in line with the rest of the rare, threatened, and endangered. Obviously it's not backed to what a true game species is, because we're still in that recovery in this selective hunting stage. But we do find that $10,000, it's maybe a time to look at that and put it closer to what the other rare, threatened, and endangered species is. So just moving on, we just made an inflation adjustment on the turtles. Commercial species is a lot easier because the values are based on dockside values. And so we're able to come up with that. And in certain species that we don't have enough of that, we just simply made a inflation adjustment. So you can see the red drum here, speckled trout, red snapper. This is sort of the value of how those formulas are ran. These are additional fish for, I guess, freshwater, otala fish, blue crabs, again, based on the dockside values. And then we all have these other fish elsewhere, which is things that don't fit in. We basically, Dr. Isaacs used sort of a mean and to come up with that value for the fish that don't fit anywhere else. That's freshwater, and fish that don't fit anywhere else for saltwater. So that's my attempt at butchery of this presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that y'all have regarding it. And I have Dr. Isaacs here who can explain the science if you have questions about exact what surveys we pulled these data from and where these numbers came from.
Thank you, Undersecretary McClinton. Question on the the deer, the quality deer, if you have a 8 or a 9 point that would break a rack or something, and whenever you come to that point, it's only a 7 point, but it's a broken rack, so you can't get your measurements. Should you look at something to measure circumference, add one more criteria in it, and you use 3 out of the 4?
I think those kind of ideas, I've heard something similar to that, is have like a set of 4, and if 2 or 3 of the 4 hit, then that way, exactly, you can have a really nice 6 point or 7 point that somebody values significantly. Different parts of the state grow different deer. I'm assuming Mr. Bordelon knows better to my left, but yeah, if y'all wanted to do something like that on a quality deer and say, these are the parameters. One thing that we did not want to have is try to tie it to a Boone and Crockett score.
Right.
We have limited a number of biologists and the time to be able to do that. We want something that our enforcement agents. So anything that y'all decide, I'm just going to look to the colonel to get with staff to say, like, is this something that's easily that they could determine in the field, and to where they can write that citation accurately.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, Commissioner.
Does that money, the fine, well, I guess it'd be restitution money, does that go in our general fund? How
Yes,
does it-
sir. It goes into our conservation fund.
So it'd be incumbent upon us to grow bigger bucks in Louisiana,
It would be.
Hmm.
There you
get more
go.
money.
Brian, I have one question. Also.
Yes, sir.
What's the percentage of collection on the restitutions that we cited out?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you it's significantly better than it was prior to us taking it over. I can tell you this. In 2013, we went to the new accounting system. We had to write off millions of dollars in civil restitution that had gone to the DAs over time, obviously since the 90s, that we had no idea the disposition of, because if a judge doesn't render a verdict, or if it gets null pros, we don't get notification back of what happened to it. So we write the citation, we enter into a system, and it just exists. When we took this over again, we had a similar situation. So moving to that accounting system was a time that we had to address it. So we made that. We had a big write-off. You can go look at our AFR at the state level. And then again, when we took this program over, we had to make a decision what to do with that old debt that we didn't know or have any disposition of. And so the attorneys that are smarter than me came up with, if it's been null pros for over a year, then we could claim it as debt. And then if we hadn't had any disposition, we just wrote that off as well. Since that time, we've been able to maintain and track and keep these things up. We're currently working on a civil fines improvements to that system where we can work with the Office of Debt Recovery. So if we end up having debt that just lingers around, we can turn that over to them. We passed a legislation a few years ago that we can have declared that not ours, but the division's administrative law judges, those could be considered final, to where they could be turned over for debt. So that would allow us to be able to collect it a lot more accurately as well, because the Office of Debt Collection can do a lot more things than we can. Obviously, the only thing we could do is suspend your hunting license, and therefore with it, you don't give us any money to buy another hunting license. So we're only taking money away from ourselves, those individuals. So that's sort of the path that we're going on.
And I can tell you, Commissioner Blanchard, this is a lot better system. When we had them at the DA's office, I mean, you're sitting there going, okay, we got this over here and we have this over here. And then of course, where does the fine money go? If you do the state violation and take it through our court system, where's the restitution money go? And it's two different places. So it's a lot better system. And the department bringing that back in-house has been the best move for the department, I'm sure.
And we have a gentleman that works in the Office of the Secretary that went and created a binder and went around the state and met with different district attorneys and basically showed like how these dollars and these things are supposed to flow. And so that was something that was desperately needed because it just hadn't been done for a while. And as you know, you get new elected officials, they just come in and procedures get forgotten over time. So.
Okay. Yeah. Any Commissioner Walker?
Brian, just for clarity purposes, we have, so if somebody breaks the law and takes a species out of season, let's just take an alligator, for example, you've got two pieces to the fines, right? You have the punitive piece and then you have the restitution piece.
Yes, sir.
So if somebody takes an alligator out of season, you charge them, let's just say $250 for breaking the law. And then you charge them, I think it was $250 or $300 for the restitution
Yeah,
piece of
put
an
it back
alligator.
up.
You mentioned we haven't touched the restitution piece since 2011-ish. Is that correct?
Yes,
Do
sir.
you know the last time we've touched the punitive piece? And I think Cole answered my question about the punitive piece is actually something that's regulated by the legislature. Is that right?
Yes, sir, it is. And Mr. Garrett could answer this better than I can, but
So those haven't been adjusted per se in quite some time. We did our full scale license kind of overhaul in 2021. And so, you know, kind of everything was on the table. There is a range that falls within each of these classes. So for the class ones, I want to say that is limited to a $100 fine, and it's exclusive of court costs. So you cannot get court costs for class ones. Class twos is like from 200 to 350 in that range. So don't quote me on those, but that's kind of, there is a range. And so we assess the class ones and twos based on what the legislature has allowed for that.
Gotcha. And I'll probably put you on the spot here, but is it the opinion of the staff that those penalties need to be adjusted upward as well? And what would be the strategy to get that changed?
Frankly, that's not a discussion that I've had with anyone. It's certainly something that we can consider. And the way to get it changed would be to, first identify evidence that the punitive nature of the existing fines are not working, and then go convince the legislature that they need to be enhanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
we've always, all of our fines though, I think remain under $1,000. That the most significant.
That's right. But of course, for class ones and twos, you're not even getting
Yeah,
close to
you're-
$1,000.
And those are the ones, anything class 3 and above still goes to the district attorney to adjudicate that process.
Right. Yeah, I would just hate for the penalties for some of these infractions to be worth it to a criminal, right? You would like somebody to really think twice on how it's going to affect their pocketbook before they go out and shoot a deer out of season or a turkey out of season or catch too many red snapper or whatever it is. So just it's my opinion.
Yes, sir. And this is, like I said, this is our recommendation. So anything y'all want to adjust, change, alter, whether it's what defines a quality deer or the levels of this, that's completely up to y'all's discretion. But we're just, again, dealing with it in the past. I guess Mr. Garrett and the gentleman who runs the civil fines program I could set it at $1 million, but if I'm not, there's no way I'm never going to happen. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to
You have
kind of be
able to
reasonable and look
justify
at
it,
other
right?
states. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And do that as well.
Understood.
Commissioner
All
Blanchard.
right, Jonathan raised a question about, like on the shrimp right there. And I don't see it on here,
I'll get to
but to criminals, the way that some of them think, it's better to go and outlaw and pay the fine and just continue outlawing during
Yeah.
closed season. So that penalty should be a lot higher.
Well, that's usually a commercial, set of
So
classes.
again, just
Maybe
to
you can-
reiterate what Undersecretary McClinton said, these are civil restitution values for the replacement cost of these species.
All
We
right.
know for commercial species exactly what the fair market value is there.
All
And most of the seizures that we make for seafood, we don't end up applying civil restitution because we take it and go sell it and
Sell
we
it.
recover those
Yeah.
costs
Yeah.
there. So that's, again, just make sure you're differentiating between the
Correct.
punitive nature
damage, okay.
and I will say for most of our commercial things, you're looking at some higher level class 4s or higher, depending on what the violation is. You're going to have to put VMS on your boat. So there are some deterrents in the law for those. This is strictly recovering the cost of this of this public trust resource and putting it back in our operating account so that we can manage the species, the habitat to keep these species here for the people.
Understand.
Thank you. Commissioner Wall?
Yeah, 8 point or more, 13 inches or wider, and then that beam length of 16.5 or longer. And is there a 4-inch base component of that, or is that just something that was suggested, Doc? Okay. That's an inside spread.
Inside spread?
Because I looked at Jonathan Bordelon to nod for me. No, we had not changed it. We had discussed in a meeting about going up to a larger size. But whenever we did the NOI, it got overlooked. So this is currently as it exists. So if y'all make that change, that's up to y'all. If y'all want to say, or add another component to it, like I said, that 4-inch base, and say if 3 of the 4 hit, then it's a quality deer. If, or 2 of the 4 hit, it's a quality deer. Because some of the discussion was you could have a nice 7-point, but, or a nice 6-point that some people would view quality in different parts of the state. Yes, sir.
I see Mr. Myers coming.
Yes.
Are you going to tell him the origin of that?
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Randy Myers. I was just going to mention to Brian, the information for the quality deer is based off a 3.5-year-old average for our DMAP program. So that's where those numbers are generated from. So we considered the fact that when you get to that 3.5-year-old age class, that's kind of where everyone starts considering as the quality. So as an average across the state, those were where those numbers were generated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So how soon does this need to be published if there's any questions, or if we want to make some changes and they're not, people want to do some more research on this before we move forward to this NOI? What's the timeline on this?
The goal was to have this kind of implemented for this upcoming hunting season. You're looking at a 90-day period to pass an NOI without any amendments or anything. So, if you were to publish this month, we would hit that mark before archery season starts in September. If you were to publish in June, you're looking at a September 20th for a final rule there. So
And
depending
that's,
on what area you're hunting in, you may be infringing a little bit on that. But honestly, it doesn't really matter when it goes in. The prices will be assessed when it becomes a final rule, whenever that may be. We were just trying to kind of catch it before hunting season.
we've presented this a few times over the term. So we just want to get it updated, and that's really it. So whatever time frame you want.
Okay. If commissioners have some questions, a suggestion I would have is to look over it again, come back with it next month, have any of the changes we want to have made. And even if we miss a little bit of the bow season, I think us making sure we have it right and everyone's comfortable with it, I think would be a good plan. If everyone agrees, but. Okay, so do I have to see if we want a motion for
Just
because
I
it is
think you
action
could
item?
entertain a motion to defer it to next month.
Okay. Do I have a motion to defer it to next month? Yeah, we can.
I'll
That's-
just remind everybody, if we're formalizing subcommittees, those are going to be subject to open meetings laws and all of that. So I'm not sure that you've truncated the process by doing that, but certainly that is an option that's available to you. The chairman can
I think everybody review it, whatever additions they have or changes, send it in and we'll take it up at next month's meeting. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to defer voting on item number 9 to June's commission meeting.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Walker, second by Commissioner Walls. All in favor? Aye, okay, defer to next month's meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McClinton. Okay, item number 10. Consider adoption of conditionally approved amendments and final approval of the notice of intent establishing hunting seasons for the 25 to 2027 seasons. Dr. Jeff Duguay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'll just give a brief overview of the process, and then I'll go over the potpourri amendments and request approval or a vote rather on the potpourri amendments and the NOI. So just a brief overview, January 7th, we presented the NOI to the commission, and the commission made some changes during the meeting. There were also amendments made to the NOI at the February and March commission meetings. The April commission meeting at the April commission meeting, I presented all the public comments that we had received to date. April 22nd, we had a public hearing on the potpourri amendments in this room. So for today's meeting, I'll go over the public comments we've received, the potpourri amendments, then I'll ask for a vote on the potpourri amendments to be included in the NOI. Any amendments that are not approved, they'll revert back to the original NOI. And then I'll ask for a vote on the hunting season NOI. So the public comments that were received during the comment period, January 7th to March 7th, those that were related to proposed changes to the NOI were 340, and there were 8 on the potpourri amendments. There were 76 general comments, 416 total comments, and 277 individuals that provided the comments. And these are the comments. They're the same that as I presented at the last commission meeting, with the red ones being the potpourri comments. And the general comments, those were also the same as were received at the last commission meeting. Those should all be in your packet. On April 22nd, we had a public hearing in this room from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. 2 individuals attended, and we did not have any comments related to the potpourri amendments. Okay, the potpourri amendments that were made were primitive firearms to add allowable gear to bring our regulations in line with the modern technology and advancements. Those are the ones that are commonly referred to as the fire sticks. Also, clarification on sites used for archery hunting, prohibition of trail cameras on WMAs during turkey season only, designated airboat trails on Maurepas Swamp WMA, also to adjust the lottery dates for becoming an outdoors woman, also to open a portion of East Carroll Parish to turkey hunting, adjust the daily limit of female pintails to 1 duck, and adjust the waterfowl west zone and east zone dates. And I've got those dates, the potpourri dates for the waterfowl. So these are the dates that were changed. And then these were the original dates. So I've got them both. The next slide shows them both together. So if the potpourri dates are not approved, then we'll revert back to what was originally approved. So that's on the left-hand side. And also by amending the waterfowl dates, I just wanted to remind the commission that that also resulted in a change to the goose and conservation order, as well as the falconry dates. So in other words, if these potpourri dates aren't accepted for waterfowl, then we'll also revert back for the geese and the falconry. So now I'd like to request a vote on the potpourri amendments. And again, reminding you, any that are not approved will revert back to the NOI.
Okay, do we want to look at any of these amendments separately, or do y'all want to do it all and there's no, everyone's happy with the zones, the way the splits are, everything's all right? Wanted to make sure that there wasn't any questions. I know some of the zones, there's some areas that aren't satisfied, but we're not gonna make everyone happy. So let's go ahead. So do we have a motion on, to accept the potpourri amendments? So, so moved by Commissioner, Jimmy and, second by, Commissioner Blanchard. All in favor? Aye. Okay, potpourri motion, potpourri amendments pass.
So next, I would like to ask for a vote on the hunting season NOI with these potpourri amendments that are now included.
Okay, do we have a motion on the hunting season, potpourri amendments? Okay, motion by Commissioner Brister. Second by Commissioner Blanchard. Any opposition to the motion or no, all in favor? Aye. Motion, potpourri motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. That's it?
That's all I have.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Dugan. No questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
we'll go
Mr. Chairman,
to, yes.
I just want to point out, public comment on the NOI.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Oh, gosh. Let's see, we had, that was item number 9. Number 10. We didn't have any comments for number 10.
Still
No.
pose it to the crowd in case anybody.
Okay, yeah,
wants to.
any public comment on, the item number 10 from the room? Hearing none? Okay, move on. Thank you, for that. Okay. Item, number 11, we will receive a report on CWD surveillance and review the map developed for CWD control areas, notice of intent. Jonathan Bordelon.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Welcome, Commissioner Morton. Since the April 3rd commission meeting, we've received 9 public comments specific to the NOI. Those have been shared with y'all during the course of the month. The breakdown here shows 5 opposed, 3 in support, 1 neutral. And while we haven't received a tremendous amount of comments, we have received quite a few questions. And some of those questions are wrapped with comments, not specific to the NOI, but more specific to the disease, chronic wasting disease, and what exactly are our goals or objectives in trying to manage or mitigate for this disease. So we'll go over kind of a few of those high points that we address, and we'll probably continue to address through this rulemaking process. Obviously, public comment will continue. It'll continue through through August the 5th, excuse me. And public meetings will be part of this at the appropriate time. But with goals and objectives, always important to define those. And of course, with chronic wasting disease, one of our most important and early goals was prevention. We were trying to prevent the disease from entering our state. We did that through the implementation of rules that prohibited the movement of live deer into Louisiana. So that was deemed to be very important. We also prohibited the movement of certain deer parts into our state. So those were very early efforts that were aimed at prevention. Unfortunately, the disease did make its way to Louisiana, but prevention is still at play because while the disease has been detected in our state, it's only been detected in 2 parishes to date. So prevention is still very important. We're talking about preventing introduction to new areas of Louisiana. And the way we do that is really through surveillance, and early detection is part of that. The 2 are really combined. Surveillance is, our investigation looking for the disease with the hope of if we do find it, we can start mitigation sooner rather than later. Surveillance in this case, we're reliant heavily on hunter harvested deer. Regardless of source, processors have been a very valuable source for samples. Hunters delivering heads to department offices and personnel And then we have drop-off coolers. That's the image you see on the bottom right. We have these sheds located with coolers in them. We have them in 7 parishes at this time. So there's 13 of these sites, and it's all in Northeast Louisiana, with plans to expand those. They do receive use. And the important part of this is they do provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access to diagnostic testing for our hunters. And we deem that to be very important. The way we come up with surveillance numbers has varied slightly. And you look at that, it seems like we may have changed course, but it's important to remember that we were at different points in our understanding of the presence of the disease in our state. So early on, we used some USDA guidance on detection probabilities. So the goal of the USDA guidance was to allow you to find the disease if it's out there in the area that you're surveilling at 1% prevalence, but you would be 95% confident that if it was there, you would have found it. And we utilized it. The issue with it is it doesn't really have any parameters as far as size. It's based on population, based on numbers. This works really well if you're trying to surveil captive herds or known populations. You can utilize this. Of course, it's not always practical in the wild. And then as your area of surveillance increases in size, there's some issue too that you can have some localized areas of very high prevalence before you reach 1% prevalence for the entire area you're surveilling. So I'll give you an example of that. If you wanted to apply this to Louisiana and you would want to be 95% confident that you would find the disease at 1% prevalence in your state, it would require you to sample animals across the state in order to detect that one positive animal or 1% of those animals to be positive. Unfortunately, that may require a local area or two to be at very, very high prevalence. Again, you're not necessarily finding it at 1% where you find it. You're finding it, in this case, 1% of the animals in the state would have to be positive in order for that to work. So we think about a state where, you may have 600,000-700,000 animals. You would necessarily need 6,000-7,000 deer. And if all of those were in a parish or two, those would be very, very high numbers. So we kind of moved away from it at that point. When we're talking about surveillance in our state, we look at it by parish and we look at risk factors. So we're not sampling the same number of deer in every parish. We're using this risk-based model, which is very common in surveillance in here across the Southeast and beyond for that matter. So some of the risks that you consider is distance to positive. That's pretty obvious. If you're in a parish that is adjacent to a positive county in Arkansas or Mississippi or another positive parish in Louisiana, the probability of finding it in the neighboring parish would be assumed to be higher. So it'd give a higher ranking point. Items such as deer pens also lead to, an increased risk because of past movement. Sampling history, meaning if you haven't looked hard or you haven't looked much at all, then we have greater concern there than somewhere where we've been extensively testing. The point of all of this is that there are risk factors that go into a formula, a statistical formula that generates a number. So that number gives us a quota or a target for that area. Of course, if hunters want to have their deer sampled and we reach that quota, we continue to sample them because it only increases our confidence in that the disease is not there. So we don't cut it off at that point, but it gives us a strategy to look for. And that's been the approach we have shifted to for the reasons I've mentioned earlier. Other common questions that we get, it's really about what is even the impacts of this disease. Some folks still believe that CBD is actually even a myth, that it doesn't kill deer at all. One of the myths, and it's not up here, is that it's a source of funding and money for agencies. It's this windfall of funds that we're blessed with. Unfortunately, nothing can be further from the truth. When it comes to CWD and CBD response for agencies, I'll talk about our department in particular. We have to divert not only funding, but personnel, staff hours, and effort towards this response. So it detracts away from other conservation initiatives, other department programs. So we're having to divert, much needed funding and hours towards surveilling and mitigating this disease. So certainly not a beneficial thing from a budget standpoint. And about it not killing deer, pretty common myth, but in our case, even our first case, that's what's illustrated here in the picture below. This was an adult buck. It was Tensall Parish. This deer was symptomatic. Now, it did not die from the disease, but this deer was immobile, which means it was unable to get up, move, or flee, and it was unaware of anyone in its surroundings. So it was basically on the verge of death. It had difficulty swallowing. It's pretty grotesque to talk about, but when you look at the mouth of the deer, you can actually see the green around its mouth. So it's having this difficulty swallowing. There's saliva stains on the face of the deer. Of course, its hip bones and rib bones are showing. This deer was essentially all but dead at the time that it was put down. But since that time, we've had, it's a total of 40 positives. 8 of those have actually been either symptomatic or already dead. And with most disease, when we're talking about disease in deer, we're actually looking and investigating deer that have died of something other than hunting mortality. Thus, your probability of finding the disease in only disease-looking animals is obviously very high. But in the case of white-tailed deer, highly abundant in Louisiana, there's harvested deer in all 64 parishes. And since hunters are harvesting these animals, it provides us a great opportunity to conduct surveillance, to actually test. So obviously, many of the deer that we do test that are positive don't show any symptoms. And it kind of feeds back into what this disease is and how it operates. It's very slow in progression, meaning that after a deer is exposed and infected, it's 16 to 24 months before symptoms display. So obviously, many of the deer harvested that have CWD just aren't displaying symptoms yet, but very common myth and one that we have to continue to provide specific examples of how and where the disease does impact deer and does lead to mortality. We looked at this before, and this is also kind of feeds back into why early detection is so important, as well as mitigation. This is a graph from Wisconsin. This research wrapped up here just in the last year. It's only been months now that the Arkansas project has ended, and it basically shows the same graph in this case. And it's just, these are actual examples of population decline, meaning the line that you see there is lambda. That's the point of which you would be replacing as many animals as you're losing. And as you can see, the bottom line, at the bottom of the graph there, looking at somewhere near 30%, that's really where that line crosses. So at that point, when prevalence reaches that point, not only are you having a lot of mortality, but that mortality is at a rate at which a population is actually declining. So these are no longer things that may happen or we're theorizing that could happen. These are things that are actually being measured now. Granted, only in areas at which it's studied where prevalence is very high. So it's not happening everywhere. The testimonials we shared with all of you last month gave a couple of very specific examples from Benton County, Arkansas. Again, those talked about what the localized impacts were. And folks were already seeing what this graph was displaying, not necessarily at a county level or North Mississippi size scale, but at least on the farms or properties at which they hunted. So that's also just, these are basic things that we share, part of our outreach and bringing awareness, not only to the impacts of CWD, but why it's important to do things early and to find it as quickly as possible. This is one of the questions we receive quite a bit. Folks even come into our offices and visit with us. Most of them are very open. They're just trying to understand this disease. They're trying to formulate their opinions based on what they can learn about it. And we're happy to share information. But a common one is, what's the difference between, feeding food plots, natural forage, even acorns? We talk about, acorns are on the forest floor, deer picking those up. And the key difference really, it has to do with congregation and artificial concentration. So in the case of baiting feeding, you're artificially congregating and concentrating animals. These others are more natural. And it also increases the contact rates. And this is contact both direct and indirect. So indirect is like from deer to the environment, then environment back to a deer. Direct obviously is deer to deer. There's actually been a few different studies, not a few, there's been a couple that are applicable. One was at Mississippi State University. That one actually recently published in the Journal of Wildlife Management earlier in 2025. The other, Campbell et al., that was in Texas in 2013, just looking at the probability of contact. So increased contact rates associated with artificial feeding. The Mississippi is very site specific because you have to take into account the results they found while they were significantly higher contact rates associated with feeding compared to like coming in contact rates with just random plots that were set up under mass producing trees. Again, deer density, relative abundance of acorns, the landscape itself is likely going to lead to a little bit different result. But the take home was it was significantly higher contact rates, just meaning your chance of coming in contact with an infected deer or a contaminated environment was significantly higher at feeders than other points. In their study, it was about 30 times more likely. But again, that was very site specific. Deer density, relative abundance of acorns, all of those things would factor into that. You would have to duplicate those studies over and over to see what that range would be, not just one point on a graph, right? So we'd have to look at what that would be. But the point is, what we're learning is it's pretty risky business. And this was published even earlier, but it didn't look at feed. It looked at mineral sites. So in Wisconsin, disease had been there for quite some time. It was first detected in the early 2000s. So they had areas where the disease was endemic, and not only endemic, but at a high prevalence. And they looked at mineral sites, and those were basically the hot spots for them. Those mineral sites basically served as reservoirs for CWD prions. What's happening there is, and the way I think about it and talk to folks is, folks are, should I bait? Should I not? Even if they're on the edge or beyond. And the answer is, we have to realize that what we're learning is that these mineral and bait sites are hot spots for the disease. So it's actually something we have control over. So folks choosing to bait or put minerals out, you're engaging in something where you're actively luring deer to the place that they would be most likely to be exposed to this disease. And we know that this disease is not only transmissible and fatal, but it's all 100% fatal. It's also environmentally persistent. So those are things we share. We want folks to understand that so that they can decide what's best, not only for their property, but the deer herd at which they hunt and manage. So again, those are just some of the things that we have stressed. Other question is just pretty simple. Am I in the control area, and what are the rules? So we've made some changes to our website to help with that. One of the questions is where am I and how am I impacted? That's depicted on a few maps here. This first map doesn't really have any scale to it, so we're going to switch to the next one. This second map actually has some points of reference, and those reference points are 15 and 25. Those are the two lines that you see. So the inner line is at 15 miles, the outer line is at 25. That's based on distance from positive. In this case, we're using major roadways and waterways to delineate those specific boundaries. So we're talking about the area that's shaded. That would be the area representing a 15. So those would be roads or waterways at 15 miles or more from a CWD detection. Another map here may help a little bit because you can see some of the landscape features. Pretty difficult to discern all of it. But if you look, let's just look at Tensas Parish alone. So in red, where Tensas and Madison meet would be the northwest corner of that white line or polygon, you see a lot of green traced in there. Well, that's actually Tensas National Wildlife Refuge. That's actually an area at which baiting would already be prohibited. So, so impacts, at that point kind of follow that blue line. The white line traces it pretty well, except for northeast, where we get into fairly open farm country. Unfortunately, the roads that were available for use there were not right at the blue line. So that was one of the places that we had some divergence, and similar divergence in Caldwell Parish as it pertained to a lack of roadways. May be difficult to see, but there's pins on the map, and you'll notice some of those pins are right along the fringe of the green and red. But they're in, and they actually represent processors. So processors are an important part of this because part of the rules that are recommended not only focus on baiting and feeding prohibitions, but it also focuses on the movement of deer parts that are prohibited. So having processors that are able to accept those deer and process them is pretty important to helping hunters comply with that specific regulation. So very important. And again, as you can see, we went through great effort to ground truth those, especially along the perimeter. There may be a few that we didn't uncover in the interior, but our focus again was not necessarily looking for processors a mile from the positive. It was to ensure that one didn't fall a quarter mile out of the control area, which would cause some hardship, not only for that business, but create some complexity for our hunters that are looking to process or get a deer reduced to its legal parts before transporting it back home if their home is indeed outside of the control area. So I wanted to share that map and some of these circles. Again, there's some distortion to the control area on the right, our original control area. The reason that circle is not it's not perfectly round has to do with the distance from positives, which are not one location. So you have positives stretched out over an area, thus that circle is elongated because of that. Again, when we look at the green area, the area of expansion based on that Catahoula positive, perfect circle, but we're dealing with 1 point. So the radius was based on distance from that one positive deer in Catahoula Parish. With that, we are accepting public comments through April 5th. Last month, we had a public comment period that reflected July 3rd. That was contingent upon an April 20th publishment, which did not happen. So as a result, within June 20th published date, that will extend our public comment period through April 5th. So just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Public comment can be sent via mail, email, or by phone. All of my information is there. In addition, we will have public meetings within the area that the proposed action has been taken. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Jonathan, just, you said April 5th, you meant August 5th, just for clarification, correct?
August
Public
5th.
comment? Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, yes, I have, I didn't see in here, we had talked about trying to get information on how many tests were done in
Okay.
this, in the state since inception, since we started testing, and how many positives. I'm not sure that I was able to see this in the presentation. And
I think I went through it maybe a little quickly there, Mr. Chairman, but since 2002, we've had 21,000.
21,000 total.
Yes, total,
Okay.
and 40 positive detections out of those 21,000. And if we look at, the control area that was in place, let's look at Tensas first. We'd had it was 1,350, maybe 1,356 since the first detection in Tensas. So we're looking at 39 positives there with just over 1,350 deer tested. And that number is moving because even each week, we'll end up with a deer from some reason, rhyme or reason, whether it's a deer that was symptomatic, a roadkill deer that we were able to sample. So those numbers are fluid and do change, but will only change slightly. And the other was, looking at Catahoula over the past 3 years, which are pretty significant. You want to look at the most recent time frame, and right there we were just over 250, so just over 250 specific to that one positive. Last year alone, it was 115, but when you add the year prior and year before it, year 2 and 3 prior, you move up to just north of 250. And again, those numbers will change throughout the year, but it's not going to change significantly until we get to the next hunting season when harvest begins.
Okay.
And I also share the other thing that changes, even like with Tensas and Catahoula, is while we do not issue very many crop depredation permits, we do issue some this time of year. So the next few months, there will be a few deer taken with crop depredation permits. And it also provides another opportunity to surveil deer within the control area. So that's something that we handle case by case when we issue the permit. If it's in an area of concern such as it gives us additional opportunity to gather a few samples in our efforts to monitor the disease.
Is that based on voluntary, or whenever you give the crop predation, do you ask them to submit? Do
Technically,
they have
all,
to submit it, or? is it
technically all
voluntary?
samples are voluntary. So
Okay.
all the hunter harvested samples are voluntary. And even with this, we just encourage them to provide samples. We let them know that they're in an area. And the reason we do is the deer that are harvested, that's the other facet of this. The deer that are harvested or donated through that permit, through maybe Hunters for the Hungry program, for example. Thus, we talk to the person we're issuing the permit to in the event that they're in a control area to make them aware that, one, that they're in a CAB control area, and what does that mean, and what it entails for moving deer and deer carcass parts. So they're at least aware that, well, there's prohibition or restrictions, but some of these folks may not always be hunters. And with that, since they're donating these deer, we encourage, and they do. So there's no regulation that requires it, but there is compliance with it. But again, there's not even an instance or an example of this each year. So we're talking about rare occurrences, but they can occur, and that's the contingency in place for it.
Okay, and that's it. I know I saw the 21,000, but I kind of wanted to get a breakdown on what we had in certain parishes. So thank you for that information. Okay, Commissioner Reynolds?
Okay, I have some acreage over in Caldwell Parish near Columbia, and I don't hunt on it, but I do we allow a few locals to go in there and hunt, and that's in this green area here. Would you give me what the department understands that you can allow for feeding in that green area on the map, the light green?
Okay, so the
Now,
light.
we changed it a little bit at the last meeting. We threw some stuff in there and changed this up a little bit. So, well, what is the department's understanding as to what can be used there?
So based on action taken at the April 3rd meeting, it was specified that outside of the 15-mile buffer, that mechanical spreading of bait would be allowed through non-stationary methods. So non-stationary feeder, mechanically spread is the language used. I'm not reading the actual language from the minutes or what was recorded in the NOI, but that was the gist of it. So it would have been in areas that were 15 miles or more. In this case, more in the case of where there was not a road at 15 miles.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, but I need to go over there and make sure these is two fellows that hunt on it, and I want to make sure that they're know this. That we're they're in that zone. I don't think that they understand it, that they're in that zone. So anyway, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Reynolds, I
Okay.
will add the caveat that y'all took two actions in April. One was establishing a declaration of emergency, which imposed a bait ban and an export ban for the entirety of the areas depicted here. What you're talking about now with this map is the notice of intent that will eventually supersede the declaration of emergency. But for the time being, the status quo is everything colored in red or green there is subject to the bait ban and to the export ban as we sit here today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I may have missed this.
Commissioner Bristol?
The first control area on the Mississippi River, the original control area, in the 3 years since the positive deer, how many total tests in that control area?
For that control area, that the test for the difficulty was parsing the samples that were from partial parishes. So in the event that we've only detected it in Tensas, we knew that 100% of Tensas Parish was included. So that was the 1356.
And what about Madison Parish?
So Madison was substantially less. I could get that specific number to you. Again, the difficulty there was just parsing some of those. We do have locations for most, but that's something I can get you. We can share that after the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I would want it for Madison, Franklin, Richland, all the parishes that are in the original control area. I'd like to know the testing numbers for each parish. If it can't
Sure.
be parceled out by the unit, I mean, the control area, then the each parish is what I'm like.
Certainly, and we possess those. They're in a data management system that we can filter results by date and parish. So no issue at all. We can
All right,
produce
thank you.
those pretty quickly.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, public comment. We have, thank you, Mr. Portolone. I have, Joe McPherson, speak on, item number 11, CWD.
While Commissioner
What-
McPherson's coming to the mic, somebody had asked earlier how many cases we made for baiting within the CWD area. Year to date, there's been 56 cases made for violations of baiting within the CWD area.
56 cases?
Yes.
Okay, they were asking. Yes, and just for to keep things going, we're going to try to ask that we keep comments to 3 minutes. Mr. McPherson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I heard how much time you gave Senator Representative Reiser. And so I hope one of my friends will move to give me another 3 minutes every time you try to cut me off.
I'm sure someone will.
All
I'm
right,
sure
thank
someone
you.
will.
Thank you. You can tell I was anticipating that. I apologize that I wasn't here for last month's meeting, so I could have been part of this discussion. But the chairman thanked me for not being here, so.
No, sir.
Let me start out with really what you're talking about, and that's the action plan to combat CWD. It was put in place in 2016, six or 7 years before we had our first case of CWD in Louisiana. And in one of the handouts, I want to quote just part of it because it kind of hopefully will provide some background and a kind of a reality check. It states the action plan is specifically designed to contain the disease. You can't cure it, you can't eradicate it, and to prevent spread to native population of herds of wild deer within the state. Proactively developing a comprehensive CWD action plan before a positive CWD case in Louisiana allowed the department to react quickly once a disease was discovered and ensured that potentially unpopular recommendations, these are unpopular recommendations when you try to put feed bans in place, were given careful consideration in the absence of the stressors. That's the phone calls that you get. That's the phone calls that my friend Neil and Jason and Gabe get when you try to do what's right and live by the plan that was developed by the biologist in consultation with the experts, the scientists, with everyone else. If you adopt this, you're basically saying that action plan was not right, that it wasn't based upon science, that it's not good. We need to listen to our constituents and let them as non-scientists and as laymen with their anecdotal things. And well, we hadn't found any more. Well, it's coming. It's going to be everywhere. I'm right below the green in Catahoula Parish is where my hunting land is. It's going to get to me. It's just in what prevalence is it going to get to me? What's going to be the concentration? How many of those bucks are going to live past 4.5 years old to where I want to put them on the wall, which is what I've got that land for, what I spend all the money. There was a good bit about the economics. And I know y'all had a couple of corn processors, and one of them I bought tons of corn from him. He has triple clean corn. That's why we buy from him. That's why all the distributors that sell their own corn buy from him, because he doesn't have the stalks, the cobs and stuff. Somebody asked me why Commissioner Blanchard, wanted to sunset it and was worried about the thing. And I said, well, if you knew Commissioner Blanchard like I do, and you knew what he's been through personally with the shrimping industry, and as a representative of the industry and a very vocal supporter of the industry, you'd understand where he comes from when you talk about the economics. There is one thing different. The shrimp crop, the shrimp population was never threatened by a disease or anything. What hit him and his industry is outside market forces, not something that happened to the shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico. Here we're talking about the wild deer herd, and the consequences of this is it goes through its natural spread and evolution. I got a handout for you, and this is from your data. It's in your published website. But the economics of deer hunting in Louisiana is $870 million. Closer to home, 20 million of that comes back to this department to operate on. So when you're looking at the economics, you may want to consider those factors. Hunters for the Hungry, and I got updated figures. 1,433 deer were donated last year. They test when the deer come out of a CWD area. And 52,000 pounds of ground meat was donated to the needy. And you think about how that affects their operation as this grows. When you talk about the corn and how you want to get away from the action plan that was adopted, and you say, well, we're going to distribute corn with a mechanical feeder on our ATVs. Now, those of us who are serious deer hunters, we got them in our barns. We know what they are. You stick it on the back of your ATV or your four-wheeler, and you flip the switch, you turn it on, and you go. Well, with a stationary feeder with a 12-volt motor, most of it falls within a 10-foot radius. Some of it goes out to 25 foot. The motor in that ATV spreader is exactly the same motor as in that stationary feeder. Difference is you're going to turn it on, and if you go 25 feet, well, you got the same effect as that stationary feeder. When you go past that, you're putting more corn on the ground. You're infecting more deer. You're creating a greater opportunity for them to spread it. If you wanted to throw the action plan out of the way, don't worry about the future of deer hunting in the state, then don't do that, because that's crazy. You're giving more opportunity for deer to feed and spread CWD with that of doing it. There's a big difference, and there's a handout in there. It looked hard, and the only thing I could find was from the National Deer Association, but it's common sense. They say that when you put corn on the ground and the deer pick it up, they're having to come in contact with the ground. That's urine, feces, and saliva. That's the way CWD is spread in a lot of instances. When they feed on the food plot, the grass that we plant for them, then they're cropping it off, and another deer isn't going to take that bite because it's gone. But they're not putting their nose and their tongue down on the ground where that infection is, where those prions were deposited through that urine, feces, and stuff. I think that the gentleman from Jonesville, who I don't know, but I've done business with him for a lot of years, he may be thinking wrong. When you distribute out of the back of that ATV with that thing, you can put field corn in it, because you take the cobs and the stalks out of it. You know, you don't have to worry about your feeder you don't need his triple clean corn anymore. So I don't know that this is really going to help him. It may, in the long run, actually hurt him. Commissioner Reynolds said something about planting soybeans. Well, I kept a cart full of soybeans from my crop last year, and I'm going to plant 60 acres of soybeans. I hope that they beat the rain, was able to start on that this morning. And we're not going to be distributing corn anymore on my lease. That's something that person in Jonesville can do. He can start bagging up things, because I don't want to buy, I don't know what soybeans are now, but probably over $100 a sack for seed beans. Whereas you could buy the beans with the price of soybeans now, you could buy them for $20 a sack, and you make more off of them than he does off of his triple clean corn. The one thing that you really need to understand is that the disease is here, despite Jonathan and Commission and those of you who served with me. We were here when the first case came. We put that action plan in place. but you can slow it down. You cannot have the prevalence of infection and allow that. What's so insidious about it is not all, we're probably overpopulated with deer, or in some areas, at least on some of our places we are. And you're going to have deer for some period of time before you hit that bell curve that Jonathan showed you. You're going to still have recruitment, but you're not going to have deer reaching that 4.5 and 5.5-year-old stage that when I developed legislation to create the quality deer program, and that manifested itself in Tier 1 DMAP for the state, that'll be a bygone to a large extent. I got 2 places left on my wall. I got 6 or 7 years of what I hope is my active hunting life, and I think I can fill them in that time. So it probably doesn't affect me personally. So I'm not here on behalf of Joe McPherson. I'm here on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and generations to come. When many of us older folks, Gene, you remember this, there was no deer to hunt in Louisiana. If you saw a deer track, you put a dog on, before the season over, you'd probably get it. Now, again, we're almost overthink. But with that, I'll try to hush up, but there is something in your packet that I hope you'll read. It's correspondence between the department and the Department of Agriculture. Y'all are on the wrong topic of CWT. You ought to be having the Department of Agriculture sitting in a meeting with you, and that's where you ought to be talking about a task force, is a USDS, Veterinarian Services, USGS, Ag, and yourself asking the hard questions. Well, you had 15 deer go to 11 different parishes. The first 3 deer you tested, plus your index deer, were all positive with CWD, and we ain't heard, and for some reason, mysteriously, the other 10 deer aren't positive, or you hadn't found them. Well, a bullet in a backhoe will take care of a positive deer, CWD, and the commissioner does not have an interest in the wild deer population, in his wheelhouse. That's in y'all's wheelhouse. But yet, what Jonathan pointed out, those deer pans is where you ought to be talking about. You ought to be asking the hard questions. Where did those deer go? Have they been tested? What happened to them? Where's the deer pen in Catahoula Parish that a CWD exposed deer was taken to? Anybody in the room know? I didn't think so. Nobody's asked the right question. Need to have that. I'm finishing up, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no, that's fine. You're on Commissioner,
No,
Reynolds'
I'm really
time.
wrapping up there. But I would like for you to read that, and I would like you to think, here you're going backwards as a commission on your action plan, on what will prevent the spread of CWD in the state. When really you ought to be on this other topic, talking to the Department of Ag, asking them what they're going to do with these contaminated pens, what they're going to do after they depopulate with their area that these CWD deer was in and all. That ought to be what y'all are discussing. But I do appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your leniency and all, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for your passion, and thank you for coming to speak to us. To let you know, we have reached out to the commissioner, and we are in the process of trying to form a task force to work on these issues with stakeholders, with the department staff, and getting the Commission of Agriculture together, also working on all of these things. So I know it may not be moving as fast as you'd like to see, but we're not sitting on our hands.
And since you mentioned the task force, Mr. Chairman, I think the task force is actually called for in your action plan, but it's more made up of those professionals, not so much the corn farmer from Jonesville or the passionate deer hunter from South Catahoula Parish and all, but it's made up of those professionals with the expertise and scientists that can give you hard facts. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any questions? Okay. Okay. You have something you'd like to add? I got 2 more.
Mr. Chairman, it was specific to the question asked to numbers for the other parishes. I received those, staff was able to share those to me via text. So if y'all are ready, Commissioner Brister, this is specific to the question, how many samples have we collected? This is in reference to the previous control area. So we'll start with East Carroll. It's 128. So that would be for the past 3 years after our detection of CWD. Concordia, 340. Franklin, 265. In Madison was 472. And again, we had mentioned Tensas already at just over 1350. So that captures those 5 parishes. Again, this would be for the past 3 sampling seasons after the detection of CWD and the establishment of the CWD control area. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Bill Holman to speak on CWD.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Bill Holman. I'm a hunter, landowner, business owner, lifelong resident of Louisiana. I've served on the Department of Agriculture board for numerous years and no longer do that. I'm a founding member of the Whitetails Louisiana, which represent the Captive Deer Association. I've served on numerous other boards in different industries. I graduated in LSU in civil engineering, so I have no background in prion diseases or scientific knowledge and that sort of thing. But because of my investment, I've been forced to educate myself about CWD and how you prevent it. I grew up hunting in the 60s when if we saw a deer track, everybody from all around came to see it. Today, Louisiana is blessed with an overabundant population of deer, and that's something that we should be proud of. A lot's been said about and reported over the last few years about CWD, and I'm not here today to try to tell you how to go about your business or anything like that, but I would ask that you consider the current technology and science available about CWD. I want you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions. I'm not here to do that. But there's no policy or policy by wildlife fisheries today that does anything to prevent CWD. And it can be prevented. You've got feed bans, you got urine bans, you got CWD zones, you got all these sort of things that there's no scientific evidence anywhere that any of those things prevent CWD. Just doesn't exist. And by scientific, I mean actual science. I'm not talking about somebody's opinion. I'm talking about a controlled scientific experiment with peer-reviewed results published. That's science, in my opinion. Mother Nature is going to cure this over time. That's her way of going about doing things. She has no urgency about that. Mother Nature thinks about things and how do I preserve the perpetuation of the species. So she is not in a big hurry about this. But she does, like any other disease, she does how do I say this? She does perpetuate resistant animals and their genetics in the herd, and non-resistant animals are eventually eliminated. So over a period of time, Mother Nature will eliminate those animals that are susceptible to CWD, and she'll perpetuate the ones that have resistance to it. And over time, it'll be like scrapies, it'll get resolved. Mother Nature has no urgency or fear of CWD. Only people have that. The only scientific proven method of preventing CWD is through genetic resistance. Okay, a lot of money has been spent in this area, primarily funded by the captive deer industry across the United States. Dr. Chris Seabury is the renowned scientist that's been doing this for over 25 years. He's published numerous papers, peer-reviewed papers that's available on the internet or wherever you want to get them. We, as an industry, in the captive deer industry, we had to invest this money to recoup the money from our investment, like any other business. So all deer in the captive deer industry came from the wild, somewhere back down the way. These are not genetically modified deer. These are deer that have been chosen because their genetics to multiply in pens. Our goal is how do we make our deer more durable and resistant to disease? Because that protects our investment. Dr. Seabury mapped the entire genome of the white-tailed deer. There's over 200 markers in a white-tailed deer's genome. And of that, he looked at two things that he found to be shown that white-tailed deer can be resistant to CWD. That was what he called a genetic breeding value and markers at each codon. And he found that on that scale, a scientific scale, a breeding value of less than -0.05 was resistant to CWD. S markers at codon 96 are resistant to CWD. So in the breeding industry, over a period of time and years, we have bred toward S codons, S markers at codon 96, and a genetic breeding value that was resistant. So that
Mr. Holdman, we're getting close to that 3 minutes, and I know.
Could I have just two more?
If you could, and if we could get maybe that information that you have sent to us where we can all view it, that would be very helpful.
I'll have the guy come meet with you. I mean, that wouldn't be a problem at all.
It'd be interesting for us to have that information.
Well, as managers of the whitetail herd, you don't have the ability to determine what bucks breed. We do. So we genetically produce deer that are resistant to CWD. And all I'm asking is that you consider introducing deer with genetic markers that will prevent CWD into the wild. By doing that, you preserve the deer herd in Louisiana. None of these other things you've heard about CWD is going to make the white-tailed deer survive this disease. It's only through genetics. It's the only way to make it happen. And
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. And do anybody have any questions?
And I would be happy to provide the scientists to come and meet with y'all if you have any interest in that.
That would be great to get information. Knowledge is power.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more person to speak on, or one more card I have here to speak on item number 11, it's Kimball Segura.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Kimball Segura. I own property in Catahoula Parish. My property is located within the 10-mile area outside of the 15-mile area. And so last month I listened intently to the notice of intent to do the feed ban within the 15-mile radius and allow broadcasting in the 10-mile area. And what caught my attention last month was the fact that this CWD positive deer in Catahoula Parish was in no way related to the Tensaw deer. It immediately came to my mind, and Mr. Bordelon mentioned it earlier, what a great opportunity we have in front of us today to bring hunters, the commission, enforcement, and the feed stores together at one time to have an opportunity to do a real study to see if feed bans work. I've looked at what goes on in states around the country. There was a study at Auburn University which said that there's over 30 states that have CWD and there's no consistent policy on how to manage it. So what we're doing here and the fear from the hunter's perspective is on the testing is that if I get my deer tested voluntarily and it tests positive, then I'm gonna have a feed ban. And so it's out in the field, it's the hunters against the commission or the hunters against enforcement. What greater opportunity do we have today to bring everyone together? And whenever we talking about this 10-mile ban with broadcasting feed, what I haven't heard is, are we going to have any data or results to show the effects of how many positives are in the 10-mile ban versus how many are in the 15-mile ban? Based on the numbers Mr. Bordelon gave, of all the testing done, 2.87% of the deer tested were positive in Tensas Parish. In Catahoula Parish, with that one positive, 0.4% of all the deer are positive. Another thing I haven't heard yet is, what is our ultimate goal of what is an acceptable rate of CWD? I'm going to go out on a limb and say eradication is virtually impossible. It's how do we control it? And I am one that, and in talking to our neighbors, we're all in favor of doing something to control it, but mandates or bans without any data to support that the effectiveness of it is something that is concerning, which goes back to my knowledge of the Texas CWD Commission has a report. And in their report, in one of the paragraphs, and in Texas, they do allow feeding in CWD positive areas. They require mandatory testing in those areas. There is a paragraph in the commission's report that specifically addresses mechanical feeding, and they found that by bringing deer together, it gives the hunters the opportunity to reduce the population, which I would agree that we have an overpopulation and we need to kill more deer, which adds to my next point of we need to kill more deer. A lot of us hunters can't eat 6 deer a year, but where do we, if we had a source to give deer to? So my suggestion and my ask for this notice of intent is in the 10-mile ban outside the 15-mile ban to allow us to continue to feed the way you would normally feed, but have the deer tested in that 10-mile ban. You have your 15-mile ban with your quote feed ban, test those deer too. And at the end of one season, you have 2 sample groups of tests. One with, we're going to continue feeding in this area. I'm not a scientist, a biologist, but in my personal opinion, I don't think 1 year of allowing the hunters in that ring will change the metrics. But to have testing and to have actual data points, this is the one time we have an opportunity with one positive test in Catahoula Parish to get some accurate numbers.
Nope. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts on that? Mr. Brewster, you had something?
Say, exact program that you just suggested, I'm not sure how the mechanics of that would work, but I do agree with you that testing ought to get us somewhere. And I think that's the pushback is that, and you're right. I mean, there's hunters in my area that say, there's no way I'm going to get the deer tested because then everybody's going to be mad at me because I'm the guy. And that's a problem. And it's a problem if you tell people, 30, 40 miles from that deer, you'll never feed again, ever. Doesn't matter how many deer you test. And that's a problem too, because that certainly doesn't get that deer tested. And so the whole testing thing is, there's a headache regardless of how you do it. But I do agree with you in some form or fashion, testing and testing results tell us something. And it's just, where does that get us? And I think that's the question.
And I'm just to follow up on that, an opportunity to incentivize hunters to test deer versus testing deer being a punishment. That's what I'm bringing. That's what I'm asking for. We've been on this property for 25 years. We have mineral sites that hasn't had a mineral block there for over 10 years. You can drive to that mineral site today. There's a pool of water this big around and it's that deep and those deer still go on to it. So we can remove the mineral blocks. We can remove the feeders. Prions are still there. They've been there for so long. So again, my ask, allow us to continue feeding, but test, get a good sample size test, compare the numbers to where we have some actual data to see. And at the end of the day, come up with what is our ultimate goal of what is an acceptable range of CWD positives.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and it's definitely something interesting to look at, think about. We can, Jonathan, I don't know if you have any comments or anything that you would think that it's worthwhile, and it could be some good information.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Segura for his comments. I was able to capture those to include them as part of the comment specific to the NOI. The research is important. There's a lot of research that it's ongoing. The thing when you're designing such projects is to have controls and the same comparisons. And the issue you run into is if you're starting from a point at which a positive deer was detected and then looking at differences in prevalence outside or further from that, really just not comparing the same study site because of distance from positive. Plus the other complexity in wild populations is the movement of deer. Even in Northeast Louisiana, where habitat is great, we're seeing deer movements of 10 miles pretty regularly from individual deer. So that adds added complexity to the equation. And that's why the control area is the size. The recommendations are for the sizes that they are. It's to not only mitigate for the area of infection, but it's also to manage for the leading edge of the disease, which is always difficult to detect because the leading edge is consisting of maybe an animal or a few animals. And in that case, you're unable to locate those. But certainly research, that would probably be more applicable. There are some folks looking in Mississippi. One that may have application is within a captive facility at which CWD has been detected. So in places like that, there's an opportunity to explore, and they're exploring that. What happens when it's unmitigated at all? How quickly does it spread within a closed population versus a closed population where it's introduced, but it's there's mitigation measures put into place. So those things really would require controls that the experimental design that would be involved with that probably would not allow for the use of the current detection in Catahoula Parish just because of all the things we do not have control over, including the movement and ingress of egress of deer in and out of the 15 and 10 mile area.
Commissioner Reynolds, you have something to offer?
Yes, Arkansas has a lot of CWD, and especially in the northwest corner. What do they do? What's their program? Do you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, they do lots of things, and it's depending on what their situation. So they're doing from one end of the spectrum to the other. Unfortunately, in Arkansas's predicament, they've been a great neighbor in the form of sharing information and spearheading very important research. But unfortunately, in their case, their first detection in Newton County, both Newton and Boone County, resulted in a very high prevalence upon discovery. So within months after the initial detection, they began to test more and more animals, at which time they realized that they were dealing with a prevalence rate north of 20% in their endemic area where it was detected. So at that point, there was not much they can do. So their focus then was to try to understand the extent. And unfortunately, that extent spanned many counties. So unfortunately, their start was not at the start of the disease by any means. It was once the disease had significantly progressed across a large portion of their state. But where the disease is found at very low prevalence, they're trying to mitigate there. And that is the point of mitigation early and intensively, because that is your chance to try to curb the spread of the disease, both within the population and to new areas. They're doing things as all the way out to the extreme of sharpshooting in and around a single positive that is far removed from other positives, and the hope of removing other animals that would have been most likely to come in contact with that positive animal. They do prohibit supplemental feeding, but they do allow baiting in Arkansas at this time, not originally. They've walked that back through changes in regulation over time. Initially, there was a baiting and feeding prohibition in Arkansas associated with control areas. It since has been walked back to allow baiting during the hunting season to facilitate harvest. Louisiana has been a good advocate, showing, at least for our neighbors, that you can have success in the form of deer harvest, even when baiting is removed. Case in point, Tensas Parish, 2 highest harvest years occurred in the most recent 2 seasons. So in both 23-24 and 24-25, we set successive records in reported harvest for that parish at a time at which baiting was prohibited. Similarly, in 2021, baiting was prohibited in Union and Morehouse due to the detection in South Arkansas. And it just so happened that the 21-22 season, while it may not have been related, it was fortuitous for us that that was the highest reported harvest in more than 10 years, despite the prohibition of bait. So we have that, and that was kind of the counter as to why Arkansas is doing what they're doing in the allowance of baiting during the hunting season. Again, it's intended in their case to facilitate harvest. I think we've demonstrated in Louisiana with 2 very specific examples, we're able to record and measure harvest that we're actually able not only to maintain harvest, but hunters actually exceeded long-term harvest averages and even set records in some cases, even though baiting was prohibited and removed.
In Colorado, we have a little place up there. They went through, they have that with the mule deer and that sort of thing. And so Colorado has that ban statewide on feeding. And what we've noticed over the past, I guess 20 years or so, you had the up and down. For a while, you couldn't see a mule deer, but now they're everywhere again. So I'm not sure if the disease just went through a cycle or what, but they've had a ban on feeding now for quite a while up there. So I guess what I guess every state has to come up with their ideas, but it doesn't look like there's a gold standard somewhere that you can rely on just yet. Maybe we're working toward that at some point in time.
I hope so,
I would think,
Commissioner Reynolds.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Going back to you could also argue that they had record deer harvested without the feeding ban, but it's because there's a concerted effort to get the numbers down. It's important that we are able to get throughout the whole state to educate people to get the numbers down. The driving force on this is herd population. Population being so high is a problem. So feed or no feed, they were making a concerted effort to go and harvest these deer. And I've read from states, from all these states, everybody's got a different plan, a different way of doing it. We hunt in Texas, we do feeders. Part of our place for 5 years, we had to submit samples because we were in a surveillance zone. We were inside a 25-mile zone, a 20-mile zone where it was set up. But it was mandatory. So I don't know why we don't look at, we have this area, we concerned about it. Why can't, I'm sure it's funding, but if the legislature, if we are sitting here and we're worried about this wild population, we should try to do some mandatory testing in these areas and get these numbers, get people to be part of it, but have the hunters buy into it where they want to be part of it and they want to be part of the solution. So I don't know. There's so many different states having so many different plans. It's just very, you don't know what the right thing to do is. And any kind of research that you can do that could be groundbreaking. I definitely don't want to say, hey, no, we won't do it, but we should consider different paths, not just be in a box. So I don't know. Does anybody have any comments on any of this? Okay, so what do we do then, sir?
I think that's where this task force idea comes from. I think exploring all the ideas, what other states do. And I, what the other Mr. Segura said, he drove a point home. I can tell you up there are hunters that don't want to be that hunter. The guy that said, or woman that brings a deer in, and all of a sudden all of this chaos is created, and they don't want to be in the center of all that attention. And then, there's no hope. There's just, my goodness, how many forever, if we're going to say that we can feed in the state of Louisiana, and I know it's controversial, but you go tell everybody in Louisiana they can't feed, and you're going to have the same reaction that you've had with these individuals. And I think people in the first control area, once the shock was over, have really cooperated and gone along, but they're patiently waiting for something to happen to change things. And I think that's what the folks in the second control area are saying, is that, look, these folks over here, that their experience has been interesting to watch, and I don't want my experience to be the same. And I think that's why we have so much going on. But I think a task force committee or whatever certainly is where some of those ideas are going to be meshed out. A plan, that promotes people participating by having their deer tested.
Thank you, Commissioner Brewster. Mr. Garrett, I think we spoke on this about this task force. We need to take whatever steps we need to do to get this thing going. And Secretary Bosworth, we need to get a task force going where we're working on this and exploring all options. And I want to, Mr. Bordelon, thank you for all of your work. I know y'all are working, y'all are going off of the science, all the science that you guys have. I just think that as we have to try to use the science best we can. We also have to look at the constituency and we have to look at it in two different ways. And it's not an enviable spot either way. And I thank you for all of your hard work on this.
Thank you,
Greatly
Mr.
appreciate it.
Chairman. Thank you.
So what, do we need to take any action or do we just
So
on
again,
the task force?
on the task force, y'all had talked about the chairman, yourself, setting up a task force or a working group and kind of bridging the gap until the legislators who spoke at that meeting could set one up through a resolution. Certainly we can provide our recommendations for the composition of that. I would suggest to you, whatever your working group looks like, it has whatever the composition is going to be for the ultimate task force created by the legislature, so you can have continuity, and I'll be happy to facilitate those conversations or reach out to the representatives and senators and say, here's what our recommendation for composition is.
May I comment that I did talk with Representative Reiser last night, and he told me they do intend on getting that resolution and working with you in this session to get that complete.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, well, reach out and I want to try to get something going where we have members, we start putting members together in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, do we have any other public comment on this item? All right, hearing none, do we have to take action or it was,
No, sir, no
was
actions
already done.
required. This is receiving the report, and then this is the first time we've been able to kind of reveal the map based on the notice of intent and the parameters that y'all established last month. So this is not an action item. It's just for you to know what our surveillance practices were and to see the map.
okay, and this map can be adjusted if there's any other boundaries that can be found that are workable by what date?
The map will be published as part of the notice of intent. Notices of intent have to go to the state register by the 10th of each month. So we probably need to get a final map done by the 20th of this month, so we can get it to the
By the
fiscal
20th of the
office for
month?
the
Okay.
FEIS. Just keep in mind, the map needs to comport with the parameters that y'all
Correct.
established through
Correct.
the NOI, and this was our best effort to try to do that using a scalpel.
Very good. And I know that that was a directive from the secretary. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just a comment for not only us, but for the public as well. And this is one thing we talked about last month when Commissioner Blanchard brought up the sunset date. And the reason we didn't adopt a sunset date is because as fast as CWD and the results get to us, we can make changes as well. So we could make changes quicker than a 12-month sunset date. We're not just going to sit here and say, all right, well, we've got data, but we're just going to get through this hunting season before we make decisions. No, every time we get data, new data, we're going to act upon it, just like we're acting upon creating a task force. And I think some of the public comment that we got today gave us even better ideas that we could come up with. And I think meshing all that stuff and creating and making decisions in real time is what this commission's for. And I think we're going to continue to do that. We realize it's a problem. We realize there is public interest as well as, science that we've got to try to put together. But the fact is that we're having discussions in real time at these meetings and with the staff so that we can always be at least equal to or one step ahead of what CWD is doing. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Okay, work with item number 12, receive and consider declaration of emergency to set the 2025 shrimp inshore shrimp season. Andy Scalisi.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. Thank you. All right, so this presentation is to consider data from 2024 and also most recent data and our recommendations for opening the shrimp season. Yeah. So first, we're going to look at 2024 commercial data that on landings and value, and this was based off of trip tickets data that was reported to us. All right, so looking at brown shrimp, annual landings and value and whole weight. This shows you the amount of, or the total amount of pounds that was landed in millions, which is represented by the gray bar. And then the total amount in dollars represented by the blue bars. And so if you notice there's a general decline starting 2015 going and ending in 2024. And in 2024, we ended up with a total landing of 8 million pounds, and then a total value of $7.4 million that was reported. All right, in this slide, we're gonna look at the same information, but broken down by 4 months. So starting in May, moving up to August. And this shows us the total landings in the gray bar on the left relative to the 10-year average. And if you notice that the total landings were similar in May, but they were lower than the 10-year average. So they decreased from May to June. And then on the right, we have the total value reported. We didn't see that same trend in the value. We saw that in May, it was lower than the 10-year average. However, it did go up the next month, just like you see in the 10-year average, which are the red bars. And this shows us the brown shrimp landings by count size. So it's the same millions in pounds. The 2024 data is in blue. We have 2023 in yellow, and then the gray represents the 2022 information. Red line is the 10-year average, and this is distributed by the size count. So starting on the left, you have 0 to 10 size, and that represents, the bigger shrimp. And as you slide to the right, moving closer to 100, you have smaller shrimp. So that's more shrimp per pound. And so looking at the blue bars, we see that on the right, you have more 71, 80, 81, 100 count shrimp landed. And it was similar with the yellow bars in 2023. And then 2022, there were more total smaller shrimp landed, but that's it. All right, so now we're going to look at the brown shrimp price per pound by count size. And basically what this graph is showing is that the bigger the shrimp on the left side of the graph, the more money that they'll go for. All right. All right, here we have the 2024 shrimping effort changes. So this data shows you all the license sales, the reported landings from fishermen, and then total trips that were reported to us in 2024 compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and since 2000. All right, next we're going to look at current hydrologic data and also 2024 hydrologic data, and then we'll get into the most recent shrimp data. All right, so looking at the monthly Southeast Louisiana area rainfall, we notice we have 2024 on the right, and then on the left, and then on the right we have the current data updated actually 2 days ago. So, and what we see here is that for this year we had an above average amount of rain in January and February. However, we had below average for March and last month. And if you notice on the left side that for January through April, all the amounts of rain in inches were above the long-term mean. All right, so looking at the monthly Mississippi River discharge, we have the current data represented in the blue bar, 2025, and then 2024 is represented in yellow. And then the red line is the long-term mean. And so what this is showing is that we've had a good river discharge for this year in January, March, and April. But last month we did breach the long-term average line, so we're above that. All right, looking at the South Barataria Bay monthly water temperature. And this shows us 2025 temperatures starting at 0, which is represented by deviations from 68 degrees. And that is the optimum growth temperature that the shrimp need. And so starting in January, we see it's all below 0. But last month we actually increased So we hit the 68 degrees, which is the threshold, and then we increased. And so we have warm water this month, or last month. All right, looking at the South Barataria Bay monthly salinity. And this is set based off of deviations from 10. So at the bottom would equal 10 parts per thousand. And so what we see is a higher amount of salinity. Or salinity was higher than the long-term mean, which is represented in red for all months. All right, so this is the predicted, the May, I'm sorry. So this is the tidal range based off of the lunar cycle, and just shows you what the water will do when the new moon and the full moon and new moon happen. And so the full moon is set for May 12th, and the new moon is May 27th. All right, so now we're going to get into the most recent data that we have. In this map, you see different colors. On the right, we have zone 1, and that's going to be where the zone 1 data set that we have comes from. And then and that's Lake Pontchartrain. And then in zone 2, the yellow one in the middle, that includes Barataria, Terrebonne, and Vermilion. And zone 3 includes Calcasieu, Mermentau, and Sabine. All right, zone 1. So this is showing size, frequency, and weekly projections for zone 1, which was Pontchartrain Basin. All right. And looking at the top left, we see that it shows week 18, and that would be the current data. So that was this week. That was from samples taken out in the field Monday. All right, so that's what the data looks like now, and then we take that data and we forecast it into the future. So we have week 19 would be next week, and so forth, week 20, and 21. All right, so what's important here is the count per pound. So we set the season based off, or we set our recommendations based on when the size reaches that 100 count mark. And so looking at this graph, you see the 90, 110 or 90, 110 size class on the bottom axis. And so that's the line that we use to look at. And what we want to see is 50% of that, the total population moving over to that side, to the bigger side. So to the left. And we see that here, we see a progression of it moving to the left. All right. So looking at the same data related to how it's moving, gives us a crossover date for zone 1. Remember, this is Pontchartrain. And that 50% proportion line is in red, and we see that it crosses over at May 18th. And so May 18th is when we think that the brown shrimp will be bigger than 100 count, equal to or bigger. All right, next we're looking at zone 2 data, and that was Barataria, Terrebonne, and Vermilion. Or excuse me, this does not include Vermilion. So this is going to be Barataria and Terrebonne. Vermilion isn't, it doesn't have suitable habitat for brown shrimp, and so we did not include it. And we see the same thing as we previously saw in this graph, and that's looking at the first week, moving to the right, and ended up in week 21, we see the shift moving from smaller to bigger. And so for zone 2, it gives us a crossover date of May 8th, sorry. So this is not including Vermilion at this point. All right, now we're looking at Vermilion. So this information is taken off of what we've seen with white shrimp, So this is not brown shrimp data. And it's just to show what the white shrimp look like right now that we have caught. And if you look at the first one, you'll notice that the 111, 140 size class, all of the blue bars are to the left of that. So basically the white shrimp right now are bigger than the minimum size. And so similar to the other ones, this shows the crossover date as it would have been predicted, but they're all well above the 50% or 100. They're equal to the 100% mark. I'm sorry. And so the 50% is just there for reference. All right, now we're looking at zone 3. Zone 3 was Sabine, Calcasieu, and Mermentau. We have the same thing. We have a smaller group of brown shrimp in this figure, and they tend to be clumped closer together. And so they're moving a little bit slower, but they're moving together. So for zone 3, that gives us a crossover date of May 22nd. All right, so that gives us our biological recommendation for y'all to consider would be zone 1 would actually be May 19th because May 18th is a Sunday and we can't open a shrimp season on a Sunday. And so our recommendation falls on May 19th and then May 8th for zone 2 and then May 22nd for zone 3. And so this information was shared with the Shrimp Task Force yesterday, and they considered it, and they passed a motion to accept it.
That's it? Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. And I guess what we can do is before we have discussion, we'll do public comment. We have George Barisic. I don't know. I'm going to butcher this one. Barisic, George Barisic.
Good morning. Thank you very much. George Barisic, commercial fisherman from Area 1, St. Bernard Parish. We do agree with the 19th. Actually, I would like to go a little further because the shrimp stage in this zone a hell of a lot longer than they do in zone 2. Different set of rules, different set of variables. But my primary concern is now the few people that are shrimping on the outside have seen a overabundance of 200, 250 count shrimp showing up, which is your second crop. So my question to the biologists here, if we open on the 19th and we got a big presence of these shrimp that'll be over 100 count, can we close it?
Yeah.
I said if an overabundance shows up after the 19th, because we have a flood in Chandelier Sound, excuse me, in Breton Sound right now, that's where they come in, okay? And if it shows up after the 19th, can we close it? I know we have in the past areas.
We have Patrick Banks coming in to make a comment on that.
That's Patrick Banks, Division Administrator for Fisheries Management. I'm going to answer on behalf of Andy because Andy's new to this process, but the declaration of emergency, typically, as you all would pass it, would give the Secretary the ability to open and close based upon biological needs. So if we felt like that we had a small crop of shrimp that just came in that needed protecting, generally you're passing your authority to the Secretary to make that decision based on those biological issues. Okay. So the answer is yes, assuming you pass it like you normally would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, second reason I'm here, 20-something years ago, we testify in front of the state, testify in front of y'all, and a lot of y'all would look at us like like a Chester cat, you know, which y'all talking about, this, that, and the other. So we developed a program called A Day on the Bay. And we started taking educators out, legislators out and different people. So because I'm 70 years old and I've got a memory problem because of BP spill, they're trying to take me off the water. So I'm doing a little different. I take overnight shrimp charters. I'm not going to charge y'all. I'm not selling nothing. But if y'all ever want to come,
Thank you for your time. Any questions? See none? Okay. We have, let's see, we have Rocky, DeChero.
Thank you. Rocky DeChero, Buras, Louisiana. I'm a shrimp buyer for a long time. The show must go on. We don't have Peyton anymore. Did a great job for a bunch of years, but the show must go on. I mean, the same people are still doing the data, and Andy's putting it together. We pay these people to do a job, and we have to go by their recommendation, they're professionals. Last year we were wrong because of weather event on opening day. Three days of bad weather, then a high river a week later just killed the brown shrimp season. People need to make money. I'm about the data. I'm going with the biologist's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, do we have any other public comment on this item? Okay, and let's see. So Andrew, I thank you for your report. I know it was your first time and a lot going into it, but it was a good job. Thank you, and I know you'll do a good job for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so do we have any what's that? Approve the, I'm sorry.
You have to make a motion.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We need to, that's what I see. If we have a motion,
Yeah, I'm gonna
to
make,
approve the dates,
yeah,
the season dates, do we have a motion?
Oh,
Yeah, Mr. Blanchard.
yeah,
that,
I wanted to say a little bit first because we had on the shrimp task force yesterday, we did have a motion on the floor, which I made, was to open up zone 1 with the recommendation of May 19th, zone 2 on May the 5th, and zone 3 on May the 22nd. And that motion failed yesterday on it. And not really sure, but the problem we have with brown shrimp right now is the first weather condition that occurs, then brown shrimp are gonna move. And the sooner that we can open this season, fishermen are ready to go fishing. The shrimp are ready in zone 2 right now. 3 days, a quarter of an inch is not gonna make a difference. And from my experience of 50 years, fishermen rather go and fish on a Monday rather than start midweek and start. And I looked at the weather conditions starting on the 6th. We have rain for the next 15 days. So we know that as fishermen and experience in the business, them shrimp are gonna be moving into the Gulf. And the small boats that we have that do fish, the inland waters, they need a chance just as big as the big boats have. So once the shrimp move in the Gulf, the big boats have 365 days a year to fish. Them small boats only have, a limited time of fishing. So my recommendation would be to open up like I did yesterday on zone 1, May 19th, zone 2, May the 5th, and zone 3, May 22nd. And I would entertain, anyone to try to make a second on it and just go, biological data is one thing, but we need to get these fishermen out working before the weather patterns change and we lose the May season. Rocky said it earlier, the minute the weather changes, we could lose a whole season right there. So it's up to whatever, I know it's the commission that makes a decision on it, but that's my take on it.
Okay, so that's a form of motion.
Well, you've got Commissioner Brister has the motion to adopt the recommendation of the agency right now. I don't know if you've received a second on it yet, but you may,
Okay,
his motion's properly before you right now.
okay, Commissioner Brister has a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Okay. Discussion?
You need a
We
second
need a
to-
second
to
to
discuss.
discuss, but we don't have a second, so the motion fails for lack of second. So we have another motion on the table from Commissioner Blanchard.
Then you can have this.
And well, we just have to have a second to,
Yeah, right.
Commissioner Blanchard, would you be so kind as to restate your motion?
My motion is to take the recommendation of the commission, zone 1, May 19th, zone 2, May 5th, and zone 3, May 22nd. May 5th is a Monday. May 8th is a Thursday, I think. It is. So
Yes.
my recommendation is to let the fishermen go to work on Monday rather than on Thursday.
second by Mr. Brister. Okay, discussion? Mr. Rocky can come up again in this discussion.
It's that your privilege, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so I would like to hear what you have to say.
Yes, thank you again. Yesterday I was at the task force meeting. I go to plenty of them, and yes, true. It was a lot of friction between people wanting the 5th, the 8th recommendation, maybe even talking about the 12th. Tide range means a lot, very much with brown shrimp, and we're going to be at a slack tide on the 8th. That means a lot. People are not quite ready yet as processing plants, which is very important. Don't get me wrong here. The Balmer family might not be ready to the 12th. They're big processors in Delcom. If you get one more big processor who's not ready to May 12th, we're gonna have a big problem here. If you have a Paul Poon who might not be ready. So those big players not able to peel shrimp when the product comes in, you can have too much product not being peeled and boats are gonna have to park and can't unload their shrimp or can't go to work. It's gonna be a big problem. So just take that in consideration about people being ready. No one's ready for an opening on May 5th. I know there's a small area that Andrew's recommending talking about, but I really believe deep down May 8th would be a perfect date with the processors who are ready to peel soon. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any?
What? Go ahead. I was gonna say, to address, where you talking about plants maybe not being ready or whatever, boats are catching, 10,000 pounds a night right now at the passes, and them shrimp are being unloading and being sent to processing plants at the present time. So your inside fishermen that, they're losing out on that product that's leaving the passes right now. The moon stage is perfect right now. So that shrimp is leaving out. And on May the 5th, we catching right on the backside of the moon right there, on the 5th. So, it's a little concerning, do we let the offshore fleet catch the shrimp or we give it a chance for the inshore fleet? I'm just trying to be fair for everyone that's in it, right there. And I know they have some controversy about some of the plants may not be ready and some of the ice houses, but the shrimp is being harvested now and they servicing, and they going somewhere, whether it's here in Louisiana or it's going abroad, them shrimp are moving somewhere. And them boats, I've got documented trip cases written out of Grand Isle. They're catching, tens of thousands of pounds of shrimp a night, right there. So, I'm not
That's
saying
true.
what you're not
Okay.
saying is
Yes.
not true, but.
No, it's
Right.
true. It's true. They are catching a few shrimp, but there's not many plants open right now as of yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I just can't accept the fact that we would open on the 5th, being a Monday and this short of time to get ready. People aren't ready yet. If we open on the 5th, a lot of people aren't gonna be able to go. May the 14th would be a better day.
Okay, Yeah, and I know I received a few calls today on the way in from people in area two that had talked about wanting the fifth also, but it's, I don't know the whole inner workings of all of the peeling plants or any of that, so it's, we have a motion and we have a second, I guess. I don't know, any other discussion or any
Yeah,
other
just
comments on it?
another question for the shrimp guys on either side of me. When, Commissioner Blanchard, when you mentioned the weather pattern that's about to start, 15 days of potential rain, what happens to the shrimp when you get a significant rain event for multiple days?
The shrimp are gonna move into the Gulf. You know, if you got a low pressure cell that develops off the coast, the brown shrimp just feel that pressure and they leave. In years in the passes used to only be 2 miles wide. So the shrimp on the inside was concentrated where only a limited amount of shrimp would go into the Gulf. Now your passes are 20 and 30 miles wide because of coastal erosion. So when a tidal movement or low pressure, you have a whole 30 miles that's opened up where that shrimp moves into the Gulf of Mexico right there. And it's, you know, me again, it's just not fair for the small boats, that's all. You know, the bigger boats are gonna catch the shrimp regardless, you know, in the Gulf. They're gonna chase the shrimp. But the smaller boats, they're not. And white shrimp, they'll move out, but then after the white shrimp, once it gets calm, they'll move back in if they have a chance. So that's my experience of it.
And another question, if we were to open the season earlier, assuming the processing plants are ready and the shrimpers were ready, but there is a slack tide, like somebody mentioned, but you beat the rain, is there still the ability to catch shrimp, or at a slack tide, your catch is really decreased?
On a slack tide, you're gonna see the decrease of shrimp, you know, but you still gonna catch some shrimp that's on the inside waters right there. It's just the shrimp won't be moving with the currents that they have, you know, from the moon cycle. And most of the moon cycles, the shrimp move between 3 days before the moon or 3 days after the moon. And I think on Andy's chart, the moon cycle was on the 12th, I think was the full moon. So if you look at the 12th, meaning the cycle that, you know, 3 days before would be the 8th, I guess. And then it go on to the, you know, 14th, no, the 16th, yeah, on the backside of the moon, you know, right there. So,
Andy, can you pull up that slide with the tidal chart for zone 2? And while you're doing that, I want to ask Mr. Commissioner Martin, when you say the shrimpers aren't ready, is this not something that they expect throughout the year, that they know they're going to open up sometime around May and they're ready to go, or that the 3 days could really affect them?
Well, for years and years and years, season opened on May 15th. And it's changed in the last few years. And so nobody has gotten ready ahead of time. Ice plants aren't ready. Some of the processes aren't ready. Shrimpers aren't ready. This is a short time to get ready in.
Because they're used to opening up May, in the middle of May, or they're doing other things beforehand, or?
Well, they're getting their boats ready right now, but they're still in the process of getting boats ready.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, and I know, okay, so we do have a motion. And
Oh,
we have,
let me look at the
the,
tidal chart, and this is zone 2. Is this right, Andy?
The title chart,
well,
this
it's
is for Bear
the whole,
Territory,
yeah, it's
correct?
the whole
Yes.
deal. Yeah.
Oh, this is moving everything south
Yeah.
on the coast. So looking at the 5th, you're at the end of that moon cycle. And then it doesn't really pick up till the 9th-ish. Is that right?
Starts moving again on the 9th. That's what it looks like.
So do you have more success when the tide's moving and it's raining, or when it's not raining and the tide's slack? Andy, do you have an opinion on that?
I do not on that part of it.
All right.
Your boat's moving.
Your boat's moving, the
But
tide's moving.
I do have a question for
ahead.
Commissioner Blanchard.
We're
You
gonna
couldn't
move.
receive a second on the shrimp task force The department has a recommendation. The shrimp task force has a recommendation. We got a motion and a second to go against both of them recommendations. And you got a shrimp guy on the end that's going against it. I'm struggling to understand why we should go with your recommendation when all these other task force, department, and another shrimper. I'm not shrimping today. It's always been May the 15th. I shrimped a large portion of my life. A few days makes a lot of difference on the size of the shrimp. The larger the shrimp, the more money you can make. I do understand if you're sitting at the house, you can't make money. What do you feel like why the shrimp task didn't support your motion?
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Personally, I think they're looking for the shrimp to get into the Gulf of Mexico so the bigger boats can catch the shrimp instead of the smaller boats having a chance. Because in Vermilion Bay alone, you know, your white shrimp is in Vermilion Bay. They're ready to harvest, and that's an inshore fisheries, Vermilion Bay. And if we hold it back, that shrimp in Vermilion Bay was ready 2 weeks ago, right there to harvest. So you're given the chance for the smaller boats in order to make at least part of a living right there. Because if we get any type of disturbance or whatever, and the white shrimp will be there, but the brown shrimp, they're gonna leave. You know, that's just migratory shrimp that's, you know, grow in the inland waters of Louisiana, and then they migrate toward the west.
So majority of the task force is made up of offshore instead of inshore.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand that comment.
Yeah, you got a big,
But you didn't have one insurer that could get you a second?
no, they didn't, you know.
Okay,
Okay.
let's vote on this
What
motion and let's see what happens. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
Mr. Chairman, it sounds like there's maybe some dissension. If you could do a roll call vote. that would-
Yes, I will. That's my plan. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. That didn't pass, so this is a motion. Yes.
Which, as I appreciate it, is adopting the department's recommendations with the exception of zone 2, and that's to open it on May 5th as opposed to May 8th, which was the department's recommendation.
I'm gonna second Andy's first motion.
It's too late. Let's go. Roll call vote. Ms. Susan?
After the vote, you'll have an opportunity for motions should this one fail.
Blanchard,
Yay.
Jimmy Martin,
Hey,
Nate,
hey,
Gene Reynolds. Jonathan Walker,
No.
Nathan Wall,
No.
Andy Brister,
I'm gonna go with Andrew. Yay, I second it.
Yeah, you already at least know. She seconded it.
4 votes opposed.
Okay, so motion fails. Okay, so we will entertain a new motion.
zones open on the 15th of May.
Okay, we have a motion for all 3 zones, which is not what the task force recommended, but we have a motion. Do we have a second on that? No second, motion fails. Let's get another motion.
Motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Reynolds, second by Commissioner Brister to accept the recommendation from the department and the task force. So let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay. Thank you. That was fun.
Video that.
Okay, item number 13, we receive a report from the Shrimp Task Force regarding bait shrimp permit regulations. Commissioner Blanchard.
Yes, this has been on the agenda for a couple of months now. And we just needed clarification from the Shrimp Task Force. And yesterday we did pass a motion on it to clarify some of the language on the fresh bait shrimp permit. And the recommendation was from the motion that we would change some of the language on what's being present right now, where the bait license fisherman, he could also sell his bait off his boat during the open season. If I'm not, I think that's how the motion read there. And Ryan, I don't know if you got a
Ryan,
copy
could
of
you-
that motion or not. You was there. Peyton, was that the motion that we made yesterday too on the bait license? I'm asking you, Peyton.
Let's
Come on
get
up.
some clarification on this, please.
Oh, well, all three, well, everybody was there.
So as we understand it yesterday, the motion was to help a couple individuals that wanted to sell off their vessel. And that's what we're looking at. And once we get recommendations, we will go to legal and see if we can come with an NOI in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's going.
Yeah, so Rob presented at the previous commission meeting, the rules and regulations pertaining to the special bait permit and also potential changes that you guys could make if you wanted. He talked about, you know, the discussions, limitations with it. We'll need to do some further research, as Rob says, into Title 56. And we could come back to you at the next commission meeting with a more detailed breakdown of that, if that's what you prefer. So.
Right.
Okay, so that's what
Yeah,
you
I
want.
think
Okay.
what's gonna happen is y'all gonna get together, we'll get an NOI put together in order so that we can get the language right, present it at June meeting. If we can get it past the NOI, then it puts the bait license thing to bed.
Yeah, but if you all could give us some parameters of what you'd like to see in the NOI specifically, that would be helpful. So part of that discussion.
From what was said yesterday is that we give the permission for the boats that have their bait licenses, that they can sell their bait off their boats.
But retain the land.
But they have to keep the bricks and mortar. You have
Yeah.
to be a bricks
So-
and mortar building to get your bait license, but it gives them permission to sell their bait off their boats also. With, you know, because most of them they want to sell, they don't have frames or anything on their vessels that they want to, all they want to do is have permission, go in the lake, anchor up and sell bait to, you know,
Okay. Commissioner Blanchard.
recreational fishermen.
Can we get the minutes of the meeting? So it says what we have, that would give us information. It's still brick and mortar. We have it all written down there. It should be pretty clear. We'll have that. And then y'all can work on the NOI from there.
Yep.
Sounds good?
And as a reminder, we have sort of a truncated timeline because the regulation that's currently in place to allow the full-size shrimp gear will sunset, I believe it's in December of this year. So we would need to bring you this
Next
in
month.
a timely fashion in order to, you know, get rulemaking in place before that sunset would take place. So we would hope to bring an NOI to you at the June meeting. Is that what you
Perfect.
prefer?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Put this thing to bed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a public comment from Mr. DeTero again. Come on down.
Thank you again. This is a very important topic for me, allow bait. If I can, I'd like to bring Peyton up to answer two questions where y'all understand where I'm going to be going with this presentation, what I need to speak about. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, Peyton, will you come up here, please?
He's gonna take part of your 3 minutes?
No. But I need
Oh,
I need
okay.
about 5, and if you go quick, it'd be very good. Peyton, can you give an explanation why the shrimp season only closes the third Monday in December?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, Peyton Cagle, Wildlife and Fisheries. Third Monday of December, that's when the hunter count law for white shrimp goes back into effect. So between October 15th through the third Monday, there's no possession count for white shrimp. That's because you got a lot of smaller shrimp during that time frame. So they remove it during that end of the season. By the third Monday, it goes back into effect. We're typically monitoring, our data will indicate the average size across basins, across the entire state. When that crosses over that 100 count, we make a closure recommendation. And typically by that third Monday, we're over 100 count average. So we're recommending closure.
Mr. DeChero, if you'll direct your questions to the commission and then the commission can direct their
Okay.
the
my
question
s-
to Peyton.
Yes, yes, sir. My second question to Peyton is the most important one. Why does the season close, the brown shrimp season close late June, early July? What is the reason for that? Why we just can't keep it open to August? What is the reason for that?
Should a commissioner want to hear that answer,
Yes,
please
we
direct.
love the answer. Sorry.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, Commission members. The closure in June, late June, early July, that's done due to the increased abundance of juvenile white shrimp. So recruitment of white shrimp, when we start seeing increased abundance of white shrimp moving in, we want to close it down to protect those, to reduce mortality of those small shrimp that are not marketable at that time.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you again, Peyton. So we're protecting the juvenile white shrimp before August. That's why we shut the season down for all the commercial shrimpers. Look, I'm not against guys trying to make a living here. I'm just want to give a presentation about live bait, bait permit people. So imports, shrimp imports, we need more regulations on them guys, plenty more. Commercial shrimpers, we don't need no more regulations. We need less regulations. Live bait people, yes, I think we need more regulations on them. And you can understand what I'm saying in a minute. I'm gonna give you the life of a yearly of a fish, a commercial shrimper. So at the end of December, he's wrapping up. He didn't make no money because of different reasons why in the industry, because everything's down right now. So he's going on vacation. He's crying to me no money. The wife's complaining about everything, wanting about the business, but they love it. So while we having to shut down, if they want to go back to work after January, they can go work outside waters. Inshore is closed down to only commercial shrimpers, but live bait guys can continue working inshore waters, tearing up the baby white shrimp that are left behind that are going to grow come April and May that we're going to catch again as commercial shrimpers will. But these guys continue working in closed waters to catch live baits, and these shrimp are getting less. As y'all seen the pictures earlier from Andy, how we had a decrease now of 7 years of production. Why? Only God knows why we got a less decrease in production. But maybe the live bait guys continue working 365 days a year. That could be a reason why too. So now we're getting toward May. Commercial shrimpers are getting excited about going back to work. Now we got to worry about high rivers, low prices, even hurricanes now in June. We had Cristobal a few years ago. So while we waiting to go to work, these live bait guys, well, in April here, we get into April, they constantly going out for the sport guys to get live bait. And these shrimp are growing and they tearing them up, rooting them up. When I say root, they taking them out the mud, rooting them up, killing them. We don't know how much they're killing. We know what they catching is not much for the sport industry, but they're killing plenty. So now we get to May, and before you know it, here we are at the end of June, they shutting the season down again. Commercial guys, if they want to go to work, they have to go outside waters to work on the line. But the live bait guys continue working. The season is closed. Like when snapper closes, it's closed for everybody. A restaurant can't go, hey, go catch me some, I can cook for people tonight. You can't do it. Commercial guys, if they want to go catch, they go outside waters, but the bait guys continue working. Now we're into August. Now we got to worry about hurricanes for the commercial guys. We get a hurricane hit.
Rocky,
I know. Listen to me. It's important.
We need to get.
Please. I know I'm going to get a move on it. So my thing is, these guys are rooting them up over and over and over again. And now we want to give them special privileges of now they can go catch them. Now they can go sell them in the water or go in front of a marina and sell them. A guy that's got a marina, they can move their product. We're giving them too many loopholes now to move forward selling their product.
Right.
If they're going to be at a
we need to
brick and mortar shop,
because I know
stick them to that.
I know that we have we have something in place already for this. Our biologists will give us information on it. We really need to move on. I appreciate
Yeah, I'm
your
getting hungry
time.
anyway, but thank you, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so that was, Commissioner Blanchard wanted to give us this, report. Do you have anything else?
Other than bait fishing license, from what I understand, there's only 32 of them in the whole state of Louisiana, and 32 bait licensed fishermen is not going to be disastrous to the commercial fishing industry.
So you want him to do an NOI?
Yeah, I'd like an NOI, moving forward where we can, put this to rest right there.
And that's need a motion or just?
No,
we
sir.
Just direct him to do the
I
NOI?
understand this is the report being provided from the Shrimp Task Force, and the directive was for us to bring something to y'all next month in June.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Thank you. Item number 14. Receive a report and consider taking a position on legislative instrument for 2025 regular session. Cole Garrett.
As Mr. DeChero mentioned, we're close to launch, so I will take that into consideration. I know Miss Susan always likes for me to go faster than I do, so I'll try to be quick. Fortunately, y'all saw a good portion of this presentation last month, so the first part of it I'm going to kind of breeze through. This is an update on bills that have been filed for this 2025 regular session. Session began on April 14th. It will conclude on June 12th. This is a fiscal session, which means we're dealing with appropriations, taxes, and fees. However, each member of the legislature could have done 5 general bills. All those bills must have been pre-filed. So what's in the hopper right now is what exists. You're not going to get any more general bills filed after pre-filing deadline. Just a reminder, for the first time in decades, we are asking as a department for $40 million in general fund to conduct our operations. That's a result of our conservation fund, which serves as our operating budget being down, and that's largely due to decreased mineral revenue on our properties. So like I said, y'all have seen this last time. These are our 5 bills that make up our legislative package. The first one is Representative Landry is running the Conservation Incentive Program. The primary purpose for this is to get federal grants and tax dollars back in the hands of private citizens, private landowners, so that they can implement good habitat and species management on their properties. Being that 85 to 90% of the state is privately owned, that's really where we need to make our hay when it comes to conservation and habitat management. The second one is being run by Senator Myers. This is going to establish a $20 recreational hunt fish combo license for all honorably discharged veterans. We currently allow this for retired military, so this would expand the universe of folks who are eligible for this. This did come with a fairly significant fiscal note on it. So that's going to have to be considered when it goes to some of the money committees, but we have been in favor of this, and we think it's a good thing, not only to recognize the sacrifice that people have made for our country, but also maybe entice some people to who wouldn't ordinarily hunt or fish to get that license and to remain in the state, because it's only eligible for residents. The Louisiana Collector's Duck Stamp is another bill that we've had. Again, I've mentioned these last time. There's a duck stamp. Y'all vote on them once a year. There's some pictures of ones that have won in the past. These are collector's items. They are not tied to any privileges. And so we are trying to remove the statutory fee that's established in law and allow that to be made by the commission. This is an effort to generate funds so that we can better manage waterfowl, and that's the account that it would be dedicated to.
Who's running that bill?
That bill is being run by Representative Henry.
Thank you.
Positive sex ID, as y'all know, since y'all just established hunting regulations, we now have text to tag. And once you've tagged and validated your deer, you're no longer required to have antlers or other positive sex IDs intact on your deer. This is just going to clean up legislation that requires that to make it consistent with the regulations that y'all have. And finally, there is a legislative prohibition on carrying firearms while you're frogging. The legislature recently amended the Constitution and many other statutes to really recognize Second Amendment rights. And so this is just a recognition that this prohibition probably will not pass strict scrutiny and allow people to carry firearms for protection whenever they're engaging in this activity. So those were the bills that constitute our package. There are some other important bills that I wanted to bring to your attention. House Bill 164 would provide for mallard hunting preserves within the coastal zone. Currently, your regulation prohibits any hunting preserves south of I-10 or I-12 to be eligible for this. The concern there is for the ability for these captive mallards to escape and then potentially breed with our mottled ducks who are residents along the coast. I will say that the author is trying to narrowly tailor this bill specifically for a hunting preserve, a single hunting preserve. That hunting preserve has come to you guys in the past and made this pitch. So this would be a legislative action to adjust what your regulations currently prevent. House Bill 172 and House Bill 124 are both Senate Bill 124 are both scenic rivers bills. They either exempts certain rivers or streams from the Scenic Rivers Act for a period of time, or in Senate Bill 124's case, significantly removes many of those rivers on the North Shore. So neither one of them have had a hearing date in committee yet, but they are both still pending that.
Mr. Garrett, do you want us to do any resolution on support on these, or do we want to do it one by one, or?
That's up to y'all. The agenda allows for you to do it. If that's your desire, my suggestion would be, if you don't mind, can you take some notes on maybe what you're looking at, and we can do it at the end?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Finally, House Bill 615 and 637 deals with utility scale solar developments. House Bill 615 would require statewide permitting for solar projects right now. Currently, there is no statewide permitting process. You're basically at the whims of parishes and their land use planning. So this would kind of create uniformity across the state. Certainly we, as a conservation regulator, care deeply about conversion of wildlife habitat to these large scale solar projects. So 615 would allow us to be a commenting agency on that. And the way it's currently postured, our comments would then be made part and parcel of the conditions of the permit issued by our sister agency, LDENR. Similar to how we do coastal use permits, and similar how other states have approached this as well. And then House Bill 637 is kind of the sister bill of this. It would allow us to establish, I say us, it would allow you to establish tiered fee systems for conversion of that habitat. So if you prioritize extant forest, savannas, grasslands, if you prioritize, ag fields or things that could potentially be reverted back to habitat, you could establish fees for essentially mitigation of conversion of those habitats. Both of those passed the House Natural Resources Committee and are now pending hearing on the House floor. So some fisheries bills. House Bill 604 established a red drum tag program. It would have allowed for a single bull red to have a tag for a single bull red for the year, and then established a fee. It would have dedicated those revenues to an account that was made for raising redfish and stocking them back into the wild. That bill did get a hearing. It was voluntarily deferred by Representative Orgeron, who was the author. He indicated that he felt like because of the amendments that y'all recently made to redfish management, that this was probably premature. And so he voluntarily deferred that. I don't anticipate it to come back up. House Bill 497 establishes a fee for the Catch and Cook program. There's currently very few restaurants who are participating in this. The Catch and Cook program lets you bring your catch in, your recreational catch, give it to a chef, and they prepare it for you and your party there. It's a really cool idea. There's not a lot of participation. This would establish a fee and then try to promote that. That bill was also voluntarily deferred, but I do expect for that to be heard at some point in committee. House Bill 652 deals with seafood safety and testing. This was a huge topic last year. What came out of last year's session was kind of a 4-department across multi-jurisdictional testing protocols. This bill seeks to house all of that within Ag and Forestry in their Department of Weights and Measures. They have an ability to enforce it. They have an ability to adjudicate it. I think that that's going to be a good thing for seafood safety and testing, is to get it under one roof and have one responsible agency for it. Senate Bill 23 provides a 24-hour period to fill out your trip tickets. This is something that's being brought by Senator Lambert. It passed the Senate Natural Resources yesterday. His thing is, look, fishermen drop off products with dealers that they deal with often, and there's nobody there. You've got the fresh products licenses who can sell their catch right off their boat. It gives a grace period for them to go home and then fill out those trip tickets while they're, not have to do it at the exact point and moment of sale. Senate Bill 185 simply names the boat launch at Bussy Break, which y'all may be interested to know continues to just crank out huge lunker bass. After Kenny Haddocks, he was involved in the donation of that lake to the department. So that recognizes him. Some enforcement bills. House Bill 38 would remove the identity of witnesses from an enforcement agency's initial report. That initial report is what's made available to the press, to anyone who's interested. It's designed to protect the identities of these witnesses, and not something that we deal a whole lot, but if you've got murder cases or that kinds of thing, the witnesses may be more likely to give you some information if they know that their identities are being protected. House Bill 581 would have prohibited the intentional release of balloons. Apparently these balloons interact with power lines. They certainly end up in our rivers, lakes, bayous, and on the landscape. It's certainly not a great idea. However, this bill did fail a vote on the House floor. So as of now, it is not progressing. House Bill 676, this deals with the removal and salvage of abandoned vessels. This is an enormous problem throughout our coast and throughout a lot of parishes in the state. I will say there is already laws that allow for local parish governments to remove these. So what this bill does is, one, establishes presumption of ownership for abandoned boats. So if you're the registered owner, there's a presumption that you are the owner. And so you're going to have more likelihood of having responsible parties remove these. It also directs us to adopt rules to provide a clear and uniform process for parishes to do this, to get these vessels removed. And then it incentivizes removal by third parties. So you could have an individual who sees a vessel in the marsh, sees it there for 3 months, goes to his parish and says, hey, I'll get that boat, but I want to take ownership of it if you'll allow me to. And then the parish would go through the notification process on their behalf and then basically say, all right, third party, go do it at no cost to us. And so that kind of incentivizes removal of some of these vessels. So that's what that bill does. And then finally, Senate Bill 85 reestablishes, I'll say, the ability for parishes to create no wake zones. That's something that parishes have done for a long time. A couple of years ago, there was an attorney general opinion that said, no, in fact, Wildlife and Fisheries Commission is the sole juridical person who can do this. You parishes cannot do it. You're preempted. And so this would specifically give parishes the ability to do it. And we've had no objection to that. That's something that was a practice for a long time. And certainly the locals have the ability to know where those are beneficial and have the ability to enforce through their sheriff's offices as well. So kind of the big issue this year has been carbon storage and carbon sequestration. There was 25 bills filed on carbon storage and sequestration. I'm highlighting 2 here. These 2 specifically deal with revenue sharing for local parishes. House Bill 444 would be an injection tax for carbon dioxide sequestration. So imagine this is kind of the opposite of an excise tax for oil and gas. When oil and gas leaves the ground, the operators charge an excise tax that goes into the state general fund, and a portion of it, I believe, goes to parishes. This would be the opposite. When you inject CO2, there would be a tax attributed to that. In this scenario, 100% would be dedicated to the parish governments where the CO2 is being stored. And so this would be tied to not just the injection site, but the plume as well. So that's something that we've been involved in discussions on, and we've been involved primarily because of the next bill, which is House Bill 548, which would dedicate 30% of revenue from our properties and our operating agreements to parish governments. So this bill passed last year. The governor did veto that bill. In his veto message, he said, hey, we don't need to just single out a single agency or entity here. We need to broaden the base. We need to look at public lands, private lands altogether. I want it to look more like the excise tax on oil and gas. So we've certainly been involved. We heard that message through the veto language, and we've been involved trying to assist how we can for that preferred path there with HB 444. So I believe that wraps up kind of the primary bills that we're following. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions, commissioners?
I do. What is the difference between carbon capture and carbon sequestration?
So capture is actually taking it from either the point source or gathering it from the air. So you're capturing it there. The sequestration is actually injecting it into underground or somewhere where it's going to stay.
So do they capture it and bring it then put it in the ground? Is that how?
Precisely. Most of the projects that I'm aware of are point source. So you've got a facility you've got an emitter. They're capturing it at the emitter. They're pipelining it to an injection site. Keep in mind, there have been no Class 6 wells drilled, so injection is not occurring right now, but it's coming.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Wall, Commissioner Wall?
The enforcement has no issue with the 24-hour trip ticket.
I'll allow Colonel, the answer is no, but I'll allow Colonel Clark to expound on it if you'd like.
Hey, good afternoon. No issues from enforcement. I spoke to Mr. Garrett this morning about it. We don't have any concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Cole, for the good report. You went through pretty quick. I'm glad
That was my
that
goal.
happened.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we have a couple people who want to speak in public comment, but one thing I didn't do at the beginning of the meeting that I feel I need to do is that Secretary Bosworth is now officially the Secretary of Wildlife and Fisheries. I just wanted to congratulate him and we're looking forward to working with him. We know that we're going to continue on a good path. And if you have anything you'd like to say, would you take a little time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. It's an excellent opportunity. I've been looking forward to this. It's been a very smooth transition here. And as you know, when I set out as the acting secretary, I communicated with all the members of the commission that the commission was going to be a priority of my administration. We get a great opportunity here to look at our regulations, change our regulations, and move this agency forward under those regulations every month. And so it's a useful tool here and a good partnership that we have going. So I look forward to keep that going. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, and then we have one item to clear up before I get to this is Commissioner Martin just had a question on the opening of the shrimp season. I don't know if it was stated AM or PM. This shrimp season is fun.
It's 6 a.m.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. AM, yes. Okay, let's see, we have, public comments on guiding on WMAs. We have, Mr. Charles Gate, who does not want to speak, so I don't know if he's in favor or maybe he does want to speak. Okay. Okay, Jared wants to speak. We'll hear Jared, but I want to put into the record the names of the ones that didn't want to speak. So, Charles Gates and, CB Allwell. Okay.
Okay, I know y'all ready to go. It's past lunchtime. I'm just gonna run something by you. I've been in law enforcement for over 25 years. The area I patrol, is within the Dewey Wills WMA in Rapides, Catahoula, and Evalds. We hold monthly community meetings in my area. I've been in community police for the past 2 years. The question has come up with multiple residents within my area and around the WMA. Can you guide on a WMA? I can't get the answer. So I had 3 members of the enforcement division come in to the community meeting. They told us, the residents, no, you cannot guide on the WMA. So I went up there and I said, okay, clarify water. Can you guide on a WMA on the water? No, you cannot. I said, what do we need to do to report these violations? So they told us, take a photograph of the boat with the captain stand up behind it, give the coordinates, boat number, and send that to us. We'll go out, issue the citation. We did that. I actually was fishing on the WMA and observed there was 8 guides within the WMA at that time. Called the number, Operation Game Thief. Agent comes out. I was in a different area at the time. He calls me. Sir, there is no law against guiding on a WMA. I said, okay. So it took me a while to find it. So I found it in actually the hunting section. And it states no person or group of persons may act as a hunting guide, outfitter, or any other capacity for which they are paid or promised to be paid directly or indirectly by any other individual or individuals for services rendered to any other person or persons hunting on any WMA, regardless of whether such payment is for guiding, outfitting, lodging, or club memberships. I'm praying to the commission to get one word added to that, and that's fishing. That's the problem that's come in, because these folks are taking their grandchildren, we're taking our children out there, and they're making a business out of this white perch fish. And you can't go anywhere. There's guides all over the place in the wildlife management area. Well, we all pay tax dollars on that. You know, that's not just theirs to make $600, $700, $800 a trip guiding for white perch. So my question to y'all, can you guide on a WMA fishing?
Okay, do we have anybody from inland fisheries that can answer that question for us? Or Patrick's coming up and Cole possibly.
Really, President, Patrick Banks Fisheries Management Division. This is really more of a legal question and an enforcement question. So I'm gonna really defer to Cole. I can give you what I believe the regulations say, but I'd really rather.
So first of all, let me ask, you have to have permit or license from the state to guide.
Yes, you do.
So these are people that he's talking about have paid that permit. And so another question, the WMA, are you talking about, there's a huge lake, what WMA are we talking?
It's Dewey Will.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And I mean, sorry, the map clearly it covers, I think it's 8,000 acres.
Yeah, I know.
And it's water and land, and it has hunting and fishing on there. But, like I read from page 72, I believe it's page 72 from the pamphlet about, and it just states hunting. Well, if we can't guide hunting, why are we guiding fishing within a WMA? That's
Okay.
my question.
So I'd be happy to
Yep.
clarify that.
Yes, please.
Our WMA regulations prohibit commercial activity. And so we have certainly cited folks for chartering fishing guides, doing charter work on the WMAs. So that's our current stance and understanding of what our regulations, and that's how I understand us to be enforcing it.
Okay, so
Yeah, certainly so.
and so would fixing, would changing the language, but adding to the language, make it doesn't change anything because it's already in place, but I don't know if the language change would help.
We could certainly be more descriptive in what commercial activity we're talking about here, because I mean, do keep in mind, we do allow for itemized commercial activities on certain WMAs. Those are enumerated in the WMA pamphlet. So yeah, we could certainly look at tightening that up. And I would expect that you'll be seeing a notice of intent from us on this very issue based on a case that we just had on a wildlife refuge on Marsh Island. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so that's good news. Okay, thank you for your time. We'll
Thank y'all.
get working on it. Okay,
If it happened to be a state navigated waterway, it's a management areas on both sides. The bait don't touch the ground. You feel there's a legal mechanism that keeps a commercial fishing operation in that navigate way?
So whenever we establish a WMA, when y'all do it by resolution, you do it with not only the terra firma, but the water bottoms included in that. So our regulations do expand to the entirety of the area within the boundaries.
That's clarity
Okay.
for me.
thank you. Okay, we have Mr. Doug Daigle would like to speak on legislative resolution on hypoxia.
That is a big old piece of paper and he didn't bring me lunch.
I'm not reading it. I just have it. But thanks. My name's Doug Daigle. I'm coordinator of the Louisiana Hypoxia Working Group. And you'll remember last month I mentioned that a resolution was going to be introduced on that topic. And so I carried it up here with me, but it was introduced too late to get it on the agenda today. But it's House Concurrent Resolution number 27, introduced by Representative Zarang. And it has to do with the state's hypoxia effort in state with the state agencies. And the most direct interest for you all is that it's recommending to the governor that the department be included in this group that works on the issue, because they're not on it, despite the fact that it's been in place for 10 years or so. So there's some other things of interest, but basically that's the key one. So what I'd like to do is I'll submit it so that you all can look at it. And at your next meeting, if you want to, express support or something, that's fine. But I just wanted to let you know about it because it was just filed like the day before yesterday. So
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Daigle.
thank you.
Okay, we have one more. We have Richard Fisher with Louisiana Charter Boat Association wants to speak on the topic of WMA. Mr. Fisher.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Thought I was going to get off easy today and not have to come up here and speak, but I feel compelled to address the WMA situation that the gentleman brought up. Richard Fisher, Meadowdale Street and Metairie, CEO of the Louisiana Charter Boat Association. So to kind of further clarify the question, it is my understanding, and we got our legal team to look into it, that it is currently legal for charter activity to happen on WMAs. And while commercial activity is banned, that there was a recent court case where there was a charter fisherman that was cited for fishing on a WMA by Wildlife and Fisheries Enforcement. That individual, instead of just paying the fine and moving on, decided to fight it, took it to court. He won. And it is the interpretation of our legal team that this was not just a one-off victory, that this is actually what is legal out there. And based off of the regulations and based off of the fact that this individual did purchase his pass to be able to be on a WMA as a charter fisherman taking customers out there. There may be a need to clarify, clean up this law, because it was certainly disappointing to me that an individual, maybe according to how laws can be written or interpreted, an individual can buy a pass to go on an area and then get a citation for being on that area. So maybe that does need to get cleaned up a little bit. And I would certainly look forward to working with the department on whether it be through this body or through the legislative body on going ahead and cleaning that up. I can say that if that measure would look toward banning charter activity on a WMA, that would be something that we would fight pretty hard. So it would be much better if we can kind of work at it on the front end, maybe talk about some compromises. And maybe the pass needs to be a little bit more expensive. Maybe the captain themselves cannot retain any fish, not only redfish or trout, on the WMA, but there are certainly compromises we'd be willing to entertain and discuss, because the way that we see it is that while the business aspect of a charter fishing entity is commercial, the fishing aspect is recreational, and you are taking the non-boat owning public that does not have access to these WMAs onto the WMA that they otherwise would have no ability to get to. So you would actually be penalizing the recreational fishermen more so than the charter guide if you were not to allow that to happen. As for what the gentleman brought up about why the law bans hunting and not fishing, I just work for fishing. I can't really speak for that. Maybe it has something to do with shooting guns in the air is a little bit more dangerous than casting a rod and reel. Maybe it has to do with when you hunt it, it's a little bit more difficult to not make physical contact with water bottoms and banks and that sort of thing, as opposed to fishing. I can't really speak to that, but I did want to provide a little clarity and insight, and certainly let Cole and then the department know that if this is something that you guys want to work toward in the future, I'd like to have a seat at the table and talk about it on the way forward so that we don't have to butt heads later on. So I appreciate everyone here, and that's all I got for y'all. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time. We'll be working on the issue. So, okay. Any other public comment? None? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Reynolds, second by Commissioner Martin. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.